And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
All right, attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. For me, I'm on Mountain Time right now. I'm in the good state of Arizona at 6:05 in the morning. Shout out to everybody. Here's your roll call. Check it out. Tom Joyce, already $20 to the podcast. Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate it. Tom Joyce is always helping us out. I appreciate it. He says coffee and donuts to the podcast. Yes, we appreciate it. Admiral Lieutenants from the Palace trekking over to Peter Luger's for lunch. For lunch today. Hope they at least have courtesy to give the steak bones on the way back to the Urban Cattle. Outstanding, Tom Joyce. Thank you very much. Tom Joyce from the squad. Shout out to you, brother. John, what's up, man? How's your weekend?
Yeah, weekend was good, bro. Long, busy weekend. You know, I had a lot of family stuff to do, a lot of friends, and then the fights, obviously. You know, I was up, I think I was up the latest Friday night, Saturday night. I didn't think I got to bed till like 4 o'clock, both nights, 4 o'clock in the morning. Unusual. It used to be very usual for me. Now it's very unusual. But it was a good weekend, man. It was a really good weekend. I thought the fights were good. I really enjoyed the Tyson fight. I know most people hated it, but I really had a good time watching it. I thought the fight between the two girls, I thought that was a great fight. I thought they both did good. I had questions about the point taken away from the female, from the Irish boxer. But then I'm not going to lie, I had questions at the end. Did she actually win, considering she got that point taken away? I didn't think she deserved the point taken away. And then when we got to the Tyson fight, you know, he just wasn't the same Mike Tyson. But then he reveals later on that he almost died in June. So, I mean, all in all, I thought it was a great fight. I thought it was a great entertainment, you know.
First of all, I thought that Taylor Serrano fight was amazing. Those girls were unbelievable. I mean, they were going at it. And, I mean, they put it all out there. They both had cuts above the eye. Serrano's cut was pretty bad from a headbutt. I watched it several times to see if that headbutt was actually intentional. I don't think it was completely intentional, but it is Taylor's style. She gets inside. She kind of ducks her head in when she throws that left hook. But outstanding. Those two girls were amazing. I mean, that's the second fight between them. I think there's a lot of questions about that point taken away. If you really look at it, Serrano should win. But I mean, honestly, I was watching back and forth. I wouldn't want to judge this fight. It was amazing. Yeah. I do think Serrano had a little more punches landed. She was the aggressor. The last 2 rounds, I thought she landed a couple more punches, which would be great. Would open up for a third fight. So it would be a complete trilogy. But outstanding. Those two girls were amazing. The Tyson fight, it went exactly as I expected. You know, listen, we all love Tyson. He's 58 years old. That's the bottom line. He's 58 years old. I mean, it's amazing that he's able still to move a little bit. We could see his legs are not the same. And it just shows the legs are the most important thing in boxing or anything, you know, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, anything. Your legs are number one. And you can see it. And I think Jake Paul was really respectful of Mike Tyson and awesome. It was entertainment. It's entertainment. That's what it is.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Jake Paul really solidified himself that he's a danger to Dana White, you know. And I think a lot of things at the press conference afterwards that Dana White talked about after the Jon Jones fight. I think you see that Jake Paul's a real threat as boxing promotions. You know, Dana White, I believe they broke records with UFC 309 with Jon Jones, and Jake Paul tripled it. He tripled it with Netflix. So he broke all the records right there. So and then you hear about Jon Jones, and he's talking about he wants paydays, he wants super fights. He's like, I don't want to challenge the up and coming dangerous challenger anymore. Dana White wants him to fight Tom Aspinwall. And you know, I think I want to see that fight. I think a lot of people want to see that fight. But pay the man. You know, he's worth the money. And then if he's not, this is why promotions like Jake Paul, MVP promotions, are going to get big, man, because, you know, he's going to have the super fights happen. That the Katie Taylor Serrano fight would have never happened if not for Jake Paul. He's putting super fights together, and that's what people want to see.
I'm a huge fan of Jon Bones Jones. Actually, I was pissed because he was in Thailand. Like right after I got there, he was in Thailand because it was Spot Bangtao, which was formerly Tiger, and a lot of superstars would show up there. But Jon Bones Jones, he showed up afterwards, so I was hoping to get to see him. But Jones is super talented. I mean, really, he should have been a heavyweight from the beginning. What I heard is when he was a light heavyweight, that he was giving heavyweights a hard time sparring with him. So he still maintains, even though he went up a weight class, he still maintains the agility. He's outstanding, unbelievable. His kicks are amazing. Stipe didn't look as good as he normally does. He is 42, so he's getting there. Still a good fight. But Jon Jones is awesome. And what he did at the end of the fight, he did the Donald Trump dance. It was awesome. I got to say, listen, we see Donald Trump really bringing America back together. People are so excited by Donald Trump because they see Donald Trump as he's now the iconic, symbolic vision and appearance of being America. Even Jake Paul said it at his speech, after the fight with Mike Tyson. He said America's coming back. So, YouTube Street says Jones the best of the best. Absolutely. He is by far, hands down, as we speak now, definitely the MMA, the GOAT of MMA. But seeing the country come back together through sports is amazing. Really cool.
Yeah, that was funny. He so I think he broke his Jon Bones Jones broke what's his face, his Stipe's ribs like right away. I think in the first kick he broke his rib, and then he ended him. I think he broke his other rib. Because you seen him go right down, or it was a kidney shot. I don't know what it was, but it was painful. Stipe went right down to the floor. He went right down. He was done right from that one kick. But Jon Bones Jones gets up and he does the Trump dance, like right here. Comes over to come shake his hand and kiss the ring. We all saw that as well. We put that out yesterday as well. We saw Eric Adams come over early on in the fight to give ask for his pardon. A lot of people unhappy that that we shared that, but it is what it is. He did it, that's it. He's a public figure, and I think it's a lot of questions get raised. A lot of people should raise questions about what's going on here. Like what are Eric Adams' intentions? Like what is he doing here? He has right here. This is MSG early on. He has Trump sitting there with all the Democrats and Dana White. The other Democrat, Mike Johnson. And then here's Eric Adams coming over, shaking his hand, talking to Dana White. Right? They have a nice, long conversation. They're still talking.
He might have invited him to the new Concefritos. Hey, Donald, when you get a chance, come check out the new Concefritos. Well, listen, Adams is definitely looking for a pardon. He's playing the game well. John, when you say he's a character, he's amazing. He is amazing. Only Adams could flip-flop his politics in a day and get away with it, and no one questions him on it. It's amazing. Clearly, he's buttering up the Trump, trying to get a pardon right here. It's outstanding. I got to give it to Adams. He's the only guy I know who can pull it off. Latina says, good morning, John and Eric. Happy Monday. Shout out to Latina. She celebrated her birthday this weekend. Happy birthday to you. Outstanding, brother.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Latina. I saw you in West Palm or Roger Stone, Sal Greco. Sorry I couldn't make it. I know even though I'm in Florida, I was like, I had to do things with my kids. I'm sorry. They had a recital and all this other stuff. But yeah, it was a crazy weekend. It was an eventful weekend. So we had that going on at Madison Square Garden. A lot of controversy around the Tyson fight. And again, I thought it was great. I thought at 58, he almost died in June. He had, but what did he say he had? How many blood transfusions? He had 5 blood transfusions. He lost like 25% of his blood. And that was due to the ulcer he had when he had that issue on the plane that they never released. So shout out to Tyson. Listen, he's dangerous. I think you saw, I think the best punch he threw was the opening punch when he jabbed Jake Paul. You saw Jake Paul ran. And when he went to come around with the right one time, I never seen a boxer do what Jake Paul did. He was like, and he like literally ran, So you could tell there's still some power behind those punches, but his legs aren't there. He's 58, but his stamina is amazing, dude. At the same token, 58, I know there were 2-minute rounds, But anybody that think that that's a joke, do 8 2-minute rounds. Let me know how you feel. Let me know how you feel after that.
I think first of all, it was brilliant by Jake Paul's team because he had to get out of that first round and about halfway to the second round. Then after that, you could see the stamina start to go. You could see the legs start to go. So Jake Paul, you saw that jab connected. He was back off his feet. He knew he couldn't take a right hand. That first round was pinnacle for Jake Paul. Make it through that first round, make it through halfway the second round, and then we started to see age took a toll. Really, the fatigue started to come in. The legs weren't there. So again, hey, Latina, shout out to you again. Happy birthday. I'm on the West Coast right now. I'd love to make it out there. Hopefully we can make the next one. Shout out to you. But yeah, I mean, back to the UFC here. It's just politics is amazing. We're seeing politics seep into the world. We're watching politics on the world stage right now. And we're all wondering what is going on. What is Donald Trump's ploy at this point? Is it to just have Eric Adams putty in his hand? Are they actually going to work together? Is Donald Trump playing possum? I'm curious because clearly before Eric Adams was not on the team, but Eric Adams is now MAGA. So we're seeing a complete different stance.
Yeah, it's a MAGA Eric. It's please pardon me. It's Eric. Please pardon me. Please pardon me, Adams. That's his new nickname. It's hysterical. Yeah. So Eric Adams, shout out to you for trying to make America great again. We know it's not. It's really just please pardon me, but it's really not. You're not interested in making America great again. You're just looking to keep yourself out of prison. But it's like it's kind of politics a dirty game. Adams, I think Latina alluded to it here as well. She said there's a lot of things coming down the pipeline for the mayor. 100% agree that there are more things coming down the pipeline for the mayor. But, I think it's fresh in all of New Yorkers' minds that Bill de Blasio, what happened with de Blasio, right? Preet Bharara was coming after Bill de Blasio, right? And next thing we knew, that whole investigation went nowhere, right? Preet Bharara gets removed. And traditionally, whether it's Trump just appointing people he wants in office or it's to save Eric Adams, however you want to spin that, traditionally that is what happens. A president comes in and they make their appointments, right? They don't keep the prior appointment, and then what happens? These cases, well, like you're just going to say, oh, let me reinvestigate all of these cases. Some of them you're going to go with the larger ones, the ones that you're like, this isn't as important. Maybe it gets put in a box somewhere and starts collecting dust. So I hope that's not what happened. I hope that the truth comes out wherever that lies, whether Eric Adams is completely innocent or he's completely guilty. I hope that we find out. We deserve that as a public, as American people, and that's it. What does Sal Greco say here? Morning, everyone. Eric Adams is a chameleon and should never be pardoned. Eric needs to be held accountable in a court of law. Agreed. Totally agreed.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. We saw the indictment against Eric Adams. The allegations are pretty strong. They're allegations, but they're very strong. They have a lot of teeth to them. I definitely think that if this is fair and due process, I do think that Adams is guilty of these charges, right? We do expect some superseding indictments to come down as well. There's still somewhere in between. You have to admit, the country's coming back in such a short time right now since he's actually elected, and people, they're feeling that pride to be America. I do expect at some point that we'll see flags in front of people's homes, and it will get to the point.
Forever, they hang in the same circles. They run with the same known criminals. They do the same things as it's related to their campaigns. They campaign together. They advocate for each other. And, unfortunately, I mean, I was just reading that you guess who the front runner for Manhattan District Attorney is in next year's Manhattan District Attorney races. Guess who it is? Alvin Bragg. And guess what? It's weird. It's weird. The GOP chairman, Ed Cox, guess what he's got to say? We're gonna find a viable candidate. I don't know if I believe you, Ed. Same thing with what about where's John Katzimatidis? Anybody see him? Should we get behind Bragg? You donate any money to his campaign, or are you having any fundraisers in the Hamptons for him? While you're pretending to run Curtis Lewa as well. So again, is the GOP in New York going to run a strong candidate that could beat Alvin Bragg? Because if they're not, how could you blame New York voters? They were never given an option to vote anybody else. So when we look at the low voter turnout, when you look at the voter apathy, it's not because they're like, oh, I'm excited about Alvin Bragg. No, nobody even went and voted for him because they're like, who am I voting for? So, and then who do you blame? Blame the Republicans. Again, I could point this out in every single election. Republicans are the problem. I don't think Eric Adams is anybody you want in your circle. He's a snake. He's a compulsive liar. He lies about the little things, which is scary to me because if you're lying about the little things, that means you're lying about the big things. He told us he's a vegan, but he's out eating gold-crusted steak. He's eating fish. He's eating cheeseburgers. He told us that he wants the borders open for 3 years. Donald Trump gets elected. He gets indicted. And now he's saying he wants the border closed. I'm like, and he's pretending that that's what he wanted for the last 3 years when we have video after video after video of him saying something completely different.
Well, shout out Vias Venturas, $2 to the podcast, coffee and donuts. He said, let's do the Donald. Absolutely. Let's do the Donald. It's going to be iconic. It's representative of America right now. Look at that picture right now. What do you see at the top of that picture? You see an American flag. That's what's great right now. We see Donald Trump. We think America. America is the salt of the earth. The salt of the earth. And that's what he's doing. He's bringing us all back together. I mean, Jake Paul said it. He said we're coming together. It's amazing. I couldn't be happier. Eddie West, thank you so much. $28 at a podcast. Talk about a lot of coffee and donuts and some 28s. Let's all take some time off here. Good morning, Lieutenants. Submitting my 28 to the podcast. I'll be in Florida in December, God willing. I got a few My Father cigars ready for y'all. Love My Father cigars. I think Cigar of the Year 2014, I want to say. Eddie West, if you know, let me know, brother. I appreciate it. I'd love to have a cigar with you. Cigars ready for y'all. Question, does Kaz Daughtry have more power than the PC? Can that rumor be confirmed? I mean, from what we see, I think that Kaz Daughtry is ultimately the de facto police commissioner for the police department. It appeared that Tariq Shepard might have been given the actual seat for it, but I think that Kaz Daughtry is the actual police commissioner. I mean, we see it when he was given the speech about the DFR, the Drone First Responder Program. He was at the press conference. He was given the speech at the podium alongside Adams, while Tom Donilon was way off to the side. So I would say the answer to that is Kaz Daughtry is the police commissioner. John, what are your thoughts? And by the way, Eddie West, thank you so much. Shout out to you, brother.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, Eddie West. So two things. One, 100%, Kaz Daughtry is the operational police commissioner. He was when he had a detective rank. It was way before he ever made assistant commissioner or now deputy commissioner. So that's 100%. And I think everybody knows that. But I think what Eddie's alluding to here is there's a rumor, and it's been flown around for a while, that there's something around in Kaz Daughtry's office that says Kaz Daughtry has more power than the police commissioner. I believe it's like a digital frame or something that people allude to, that they said it's been observed in his office. Now, I don't know that that's true, and I don't know that that's not. But you know, if it is, I would assume it's a quote from this podcast. I don't know if you said it. I said it. So shout out to you if it is true, Kaz Daughtry. You know, thank you for listening.
He definitely has more power than the PC. He is the PC. That's
But that's the rumor. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. So if any media get it in there, you know, maybe take a look around. Yeah. Anybody could get a picture of that, we'll pay you, by the way.
Shout out. Let's get in today's topic, man. Let's talk about the NYPD's $400,000 lieutenant. It's my phone has been off the hook when it comes to this. Everyone has different thoughts. So I definitely like to get into it. I'm curious what our friends and listeners of the podcast think about this.
Yeah, I mean, so we all saw what happened, right? The article came out. I think, you know, we were making fun of it. We really didn't report on it too much. We spoke about it about a week ago. Little meme came out about it, $400,000 lieutenant. He is the condensed version of that. That's going to be the thumbnail for this episode. So, yeah, so a lieutenant in the New York City Police Department works in Chief Jeffrey Madry's office, Chief of Department's office. Rumored to be that she is not full duty, meaning that she cannot actually go out on the street. Even if she could, she works in an administrative position and the upper echelon of the NYPD, right? This is when we talk about the upper echelon of the NYPD, this is who we're talking about. The police commissioner, chief of department, deputy commissioner of operations. Now, it never was, but now that's the upper echelon. Chief of internal affairs, chief of patrol, chief of detectives. These are the upper echelon of the NYPD. Now, the progressive think tank, strategic initiatives division, that is the upper echelon of the NYPD. So she works in that office. So her herself falls into the upper echelon. If you're a lieutenant in that office, you are what we are called juiced or hooked. And nothing wrong with that. A lot of people have done that, and traditionally those people are going to make money sitting at their desks. Right? They're going to make it. And I'm not saying they're just sitting there doing their nails or they're talking on the phone. Whatever they're doing for the chief, whatever it is, whether it's setting up press conferences, whether it's setting up details, whether it's collecting information for the chief, they're doing, they work for the chief. They're basically the chief's right-hand people. So, it's always been known these people get take-home cars. They get 40 hours of overtime a month, which is the cap, right? So we just talked about how the NYPD said they were going to remove the cap. So I think it's in like when you start to look at that now, how much money they're making, that's when you have to raise an eyebrow about the mismanagement. Like, what are you thinking when you heard about this story?
So without any context behind it, right? Without knowing her story, it sounds completely egregious, right? I mean, I don't blame her. I just want to point that out. I don't blame her. If any lieutenant, if you have an opportunity to make 400,000 or even $500,000, go for it. I don't blame her. Her job is to go to work and make as much money as possible. If I had an opportunity to make 400,000 as a special ops lieutenant, I would take it. Right? I was not given that opportunity. I was given I was afforded overtime to go out there and do the job, but we had to justify. We had to justify getting illegal firearms. We had to justify production and performance to get overtime. And I would say on the average, I was getting anywhere from 40 to 60 a month, and which I thought was pretty fair. But this is far more egregious. But at the same time, I was pounding the pavement myself and amazing men and women in my teams who were pounding the pavement, producing illegal firearms, getting closing out robbery patterns, really hitting the pavement to get these arrests, and to equate to overtime. Right, had to be justified. But to be admin, and I get it. You're in the chief of department's office. You're close to the king. Of course, they're going to take care of you. But this is just insane and egregious. Now, I just want to say this also. I was getting attacked by a couple of people on X and also through Instagram, and some people texting me and saying that, well, she's a cancer survivor. And I will just say that's dear to my heart if she is a cancer survivor. I mean, God bless her. But at the same token, at some point, it is egregious. I mean, if she is a cancer survivor, I mean, it's impossible for her to do this much work, suffering from such a horrible disease. Yes, should we to get together as a whole in the police department and take care of someone if they're sick? Absolutely. Should the unions get involved? But the bottom line is to make $400,000 a year as a lieutenant in an administrative role. It sounds virtually impossible. I sat down numerous times trying to figure out the math. How with 5 weeks vacation a year and days off, it just doesn't seem possible. Yeah, people, the chief's going to hook up their people. I get it. But at what point does it come egregious to the point where we have squad guys, where they're getting caps, they have important cases to close out, and they can't tackle those cases because of overtime caps. We have cops on patrol that can't stay out there and do a late job and be thorough because of the overtime. They're scared of staying an hour on a face-to-face relief post. Or we have lieutenants in a command who can't take extra overtime, to manage their platoons or manage their special operation. And this is, I think it's egregious.
100%. So a shout out to our latest troll YouTube user. He says, Kaz raking in the OT, and you won't be getting a variable. LOL. So Eric has his variable, and I just want to, because we've been getting a lot of hate lately that we're bitter, that I'm mad that my pension's lower because I vested, and Eric's mad that he got forced out because supposedly the community fired him. I believe that's coming from somebody who killed somebody by accident. So we're not 100% sure.
That's coming from a fat loser.
I just question before I go for you, Eric. If you accidentally discharge a firearm and murder someone, should you be fired or should you be promoted to the chief of patrol?
Absolutely. Shout out to John Shell, which we believe is Gene Lewis online, right? Hiding behind that fake moniker. We know what happened to the Asian police officer that shot and killed someone accidentally. He actually faced losing his freedom. He was actually convicted, right? It was overturned. You should not be promoted to the chief of patrol for accidentally taking the life of another. Absolutely not. You should just be happy that you're not going to jail. Your career at that point should end. I learned in the Marine Corps, an accidental discharge is stupidity, a lack of training, and you're completely inadequate. And in the Marine Corps, if you have an accidental discharge, you are held extremely liable. And you could have 45 days restriction. You could spend time in the brig. There's some serious accountability that you're held for if you have an accidental discharge. To take the life of another, you should not be promoted. You should be terminated. That should have been the end of your career. That's it. That's simple.
Yeah, and then like I don't get the whole bitterness or even talking about the pensions. Like I guarantee my financial situation is better than all of yours. I guarantee it. I guarantee that I have more money in my play account with Fidelity than you guys do in your 401 or your 457s. So I don't know what people are talking about. I mean, I do what I want. Eric does what he wants. I live a great life. I buy what I want. I go where I want. I dress how I want. I wish the same for you people one day. So no, we're not bitter. We're giving an analysis on situations. I think this podcast is vital. And I think the amount of people and the amount of downloads we get every month justify that fact that we're not just two bitter cops sitting here ranting. We're actually reporting the news. You're hearing an analysis that you won't hear on Fox, you won't hear on CNN, you won't hear on MSNBC. We're giving a completely different perspective on policing, sort of like when you watch former NFL players narrate an NFL game. And for those of you that don't like it, too bad, deal with it, But yeah, we're absolutely not bitter. I'm not bitter. I don't wish anything bad for any of you people. If you did something bad, then I just think you should get what you deserve, like what everybody else is. So yeah. Shout out to you for worrying about my pension, but I'm good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Shout out to you guys for also worrying about Eric, but he's good too. We're good.
Yeah, apparently, according to Gene Lewis, who we believe to be John Shell, that I was fired by the community. Just want to say thank you so much. I do have a pension. I have the variable. I'm enjoying it. I'm out west traveling. John Shell, if you'd love to visit me, I'd love to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you and a cigar anytime, and I can sit there and look at your fat triple neck. No problem, brother. So TB Watts, shout out to you. $5 to the podcast. Coffee and Donuts says good morning. PSA 4 alumni, friend of Lieutenant Dim, Cup of Joe on me. Shout out to you. I'm not sure who it is, but let me know when you get a chance. I'll always keep your identity anonymous, just like John Shell and wants to keep his identity anonymous when he uses Gene Lewis or other names, Juju. We know who they are. That's no problem. Anyway, listen, we don't care about him. I think he's a complete bum. I think he should kiss his lucky stars that he's actually walked and has his freedom. Bottom line is he took the life of another, accidental, negligent discharge, however you want to call it. He says it wasn't intentional. That's a problem. You shouldn't be out there. You shouldn't be the chief of patrol. Because now, God forbid, someone else is involved in the same incident. Someone takes the life of another by accident. Doesn't intend to do it. How could John Shell actually discipline that person or actually make an assessment on how they move forward in their career? He cannot. He cannot. How can Sal Greco be wrongfully terminated? Sal Greco didn't shoot anybody. How can Marlon Bethel lose his career? He didn't shoot anyone. Again, standards don't apply in this police department.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think John Shell's a great person. You guys should ask Dana Rachelin about how great a person John Shell is. She could tell you. She could tell you better than us. So he's a great person. He really cares about victims. So all right, let's get into this article. And where is it? It's over here. How the NYPD's top earner raked in $403,000 last year, including an eye-popping amount in overtime. This article is a New York Post article by Tina Moore and Matthew Sadaka. The highest-paid NYPD employee last year raked in over $400,000 doing administrative work, with more than half of her call coming in from staggering overtime pay, the Post has learned. Lieutenant Quatisha Epps, a 19-year veteran in the New York City Police Department's chief of department, Jeffrey Madry's office, pocketed an eye-watering $403,515 in fiscal year 2024, having pulled in $204,453.48 in overtime pay on top of her base salary of $164,477 and fringe benefits, according to city payroll records. Before I even go further, what do you think about she made more money in overtime than she did on her salary?
Right. It's funny. We spoke about that yesterday. I said, isn't it amazing that she doubled her actual salary itself? It's amazing. I heard that she's actually a really nice person. I've heard great things about her. I heard she's valuable to that office, and no one's disputing that. We're not disputing that. But this is still egregious. This is, how valuable can you be? How can she actually properly, if she is that valuable, how can she actually properly perform? I mean, we can pretty much do the math. She doesn't require sleep. She doesn't require days off. She doesn't require vacations. This is virtually impossible. I mean, this is insane. And that's why now this opens up Pandora's box, and it's open to a lot of questions, which I think why we're getting now attacked is because we understand the civil lines of the police department. We're not going to be some of these podcasts that go out there and mooch everybody and give the back to blue and all the answers that you want. We're giving real perspective here. This is a fair assessment. We all agree. This is just completely insane. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't seem right. So there are a lot of questions. The appearance of impropriety is here. And again, I don't blame her. I blame the management of the police department, the nepotism that equates to corruption that's going on in the upper echelon of the police department. We say the job isn't fair. The job's on another level. The job sucks. We hear these things for years. Who is the job? I've been saying this for years. You know who the job is? The job is the chiefs. The chiefs that have the power to do what they want with this job. That's Chief Madry, your chief of department. That's John Shelley, your chief of patrol. Now Kaz Daughtry, deputy commissioner of operations. Tariq Shebin. They're the jobs. They're the ones that have the ability to make this job great, to make it fair, to have good leadership. They're the ones that have the ability to allow someone to make $400,000, while other police officers, sergeants and lieutenants, are scratching, begging for 5 and 10 hours a month, begging for some overtime, while someone is making $400,000. And supposedly, administrative duty, that's another problem. Again, this hurts morale. So for John Shell to say morale is outstanding, this just completely cuts right through the camaraderie. This is insane. And shout out to you, Bruce. I really appreciate it. I saw you put your name out there. Shout out to you. Awesome cop. Naked Coffee, $5. Don't always get to watch the live, but when in, I'm glad. I caught it live today. Thanks, gents. Retired member of service. Thank you so much. We're retired also. John Shell doesn't like it, but yep, we're retired, earning pensions. Thank you so much. Thank you for the coffee and donuts of the podcast. Shout out to you. Please join us on the lives Monday through Friday. We're here 8:05 Eastern time, and I'm on the West Coast right now, so my times are constantly changing. Naked Coffee, shout out to you.
Yeah, so who was it? It was AA 1989. AA 1989 brings in class of 89, says call out Tanya Kinsella. She's in charge of the overtime. Tanya Kinsella is the first deputy commissioner of the NYPD. 100% right. I know people who have not even came anywhere close to making this amount of money or putting in those amount of hours in order to make that money. And IB had cases on them, and they were looking to arrest them for actually doing their job. So 100% there are overtime controls in place where we talk about that. When we talk about an NYPD cap, we talked about, should the cap be lifted? Should there be a cap? I think for human sake, there has to be a cap. But we could lift it to, it doesn't need to be set strictly at 40. It depends what you're doing. It depends the month. It depends what you're investigating, right? Why are we sending home detectives after 30 hours when they have a ton of cases on their docket and they've been out of details 3 days a week? So yeah, I think that, there is a talk that some people are going to need more overtime. She's in one of those positions where I'm going to say she's going to need more overtime. But how much? Is it humanly possible? And when we look at the overtime controls, everyone that knows the police department, when you look at police department overtime, they probably scrutinize the overtime more than they scrutinize crime or anything else in policing. So every day, chiefs get everyone that's under them a overtime report. Overtime report consists of everyone in the precinct, everyone in their command, let me say, how many hours they've amassed, what the dollar amount of those hours are. And they do that for a day. They do that for a 7-day. They do that for a 14-day. They do that for a 28-day. They do that for the month. They do that for the year. And it's all labeled out there. And the highest earners go right to the top of that list. And so we know who the highest earners are. So everyone in the police department knew exactly how much overtime was being made by this lieutenant. And then the question comes, is it possible? I don't know. I mean, is it possible if you worked 365 days for the year? Yes, it would still be very hard. That would assume that you took no days off, you had no days off, and you never took vacation. Right? So that if we assume that, we could say it's a very hard road, but it can be done. So I'm not saying that anything happened here or it didn't. I'm just saying it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right to me. And again, why did she need to get that much overtime? Now, I understand that she's going to make more overtime than probably 99% of the job. I get that. And she probably needs to do that. I 100% understand that. To fulfill her duties and fulfill her mission, you're working at the upper echelon of the NYPD under the chief of department's office. Your office is in charge of every function in the New York City Police Department. So I understand all that. I get that. Maybe she gets 50 hours a month. Maybe she gets 60 hours a month. Maybe she even gets 70 hours a month. But where does it come to that it's either impossible? And then where does it fall to and I see people on here, oh, she's a nice person, she's a good person. I'm not talking about her personality. I don't know the woman from a hole in the wall. I hear that I heard the same thing that Eric heard, that she's a cancer survivor. I wish her nothing but the best in her health and in life going forward. But we're just talking about what's out there in the news, and this is what's out there, and this is my honest opinion on it. I don't know that it is possible. I don't know that it's possible, and I know people, again, who they tried to arrest for grand larceny for not even coming a quarter of the way of overtime that she's put in. So where's the standards in the NYPD? Is there an investigation being done? I say if there is, it's not going to be a thorough one.
Well, I tell you what, there's a lot of layers to peel back here, right? So the first thing is this: I've been trying to just do a rough estimate of an idea of how many hours she would have to do to actually get this much overtime. And I assess it anywhere from about 208 to 215 hours a month she would have to do to get this type of overtime. So on a 4-week period, that's about 52 to 55 hours a week. Now, barring, let's say she doesn't take any days off, any vacations, even then, it's virtually impossible. At some point, you have to go home. I mean, you pretty much have to do about 10 hours overtime a day, including on your RDOs. I think this is virtually, I don't think it's even possible. So that's the first caveat to this. That's the first problem, the first layer. The other thing I think, which is terrible about this, is the leadership, the management of this police department puts this lieutenant in a very precarious position right now. I don't blame her. She had an opportunity. She took that opportunity because now that she's in this position, that must be a funny comment. I see you laughing.
Rob, look at you.
I saw you. I was like, did I do something good?
Maybe she was the pilot program to lift the cab. I guess so.
That's hilarious. But if you look at it, right, I think they put her in a precarious position because we know the history of the police department. The leadership doesn't take accountability and say, hey, listen, we made a mistake. We're not managing it properly. We have to figure out how to manage this properly. Instead, they'll put the onus on this lieutenant. And now, because all eyes are on her, and not just the system, but all eyes are on her, she's now, honestly, she's put in a position where she's forced to retire. So if she wanted to stay longer in the police department because she's that valuable, if they want to keep her at the upper echelon and keep her in this office, she's now in a position that she's pretty much forced to retire at this point just to get all eyes off of her. I don't think the leadership is going to say, hey, we gave her the opportunity, she took it, and we mismanaged it, and we need to go back to the drawing board. That's not what's going to happen. We know that. How do we know what's going on right now? What's going to happen is because you look at the history of the past. The best reflection of the past is what's going to happen in the future. So we could say it with this lieutenant right here. The other thing is to say, even if that's the case, let's say she's the best lieutenant that we've ever seen in the entire police department, and she's the only one to do this job. That's a problem also. I read the book by Steve Jobs. You have to have a system in place. So if she does, God forbid, she has a relapse and does have cancer or some severe medical issues, if she's not capable to do the job, does that mean that this position does not carry forward? Does the upper echelon of police department, the chief of department's office, now suffer because she's the only one that knows how to do that job? That's another problem, because there has to be a system in place so that we can move forward. Again, we're not talking about her being a nice person. I hear she's a very nice person. We're not talking about her health issues. I feel sorry for her. I wish her well. God bless. I'll even pray for her if she's a cancer survivor. But the reality is this amount is completely egregious. And if someone else was in this position, would they be allotted the same opportunities? And the answer to that is absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, I agree, so I agree with you, and then Mike Freed saying, oh, well, she can't get an insurance policy. I mean, I don't know if she can or she can't, Mike, but there's a lot of people on the job that are in very desperate situations in their own health, in their family's health, in their children's health. And again, they wouldn't be allotted the same scenario. So I get it. It's just, it appears to be an egregious amount of overtime, not just for her, by the way. And we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about all of that. But since this is the news, we're reporting on it. Chris Arnold says it's a big club. We ain't in it. YouTube user, don't worry. We know who you are. We know what you submitted illegally, and we will be naming you in a grand jury to have you come and submit what you passed illegally in the New York City Police Department. So don't worry, don't stress too much. Just because you handed in a fake card to the NYPD during the vaccine mandate, it's okay. It's okay. You'll be all right, guy. Don't worry. The truth shall set you
Patrick Donahue says a lieutenant in the 4-0 precinct was arrested a few years back for stealing overtime, and he didn't make anywhere near $400,000. Absolutely. I mean, this is a number we haven't seen before. I remember there were times where I sacrificed an investigation or sacrificed being thorough when it came to particular paperwork, or actually put in time just to get the eyes off. I knew I was going over that 60-hour mark, and I took it in time just because I figured I don't want to spite my face to bite my nose to spite my face and lose the overtime the following month. I mean, but we're talking about 60 hours in a month. What she's getting is close to 60 hours in a week. I remember I was exhausted. I figured, getting 60 a month and working, going back and forth, traveling, I was exhausted. So, I mean, if she's doing close to 60 a week, I don't know how she did it. I just don't think it's that possible. I mean, and if she's a cancer survivor, how is she doing all that? I mean, even if that's the case, then this is abusive. I mean, honestly, I have a lot of stamina. I'm in shape to take care of myself, and there were times where I was exhausted. What about managing your family and managing the job? I don't see it. I don't see how you can do it.
Yeah, so the astonishing amount of overtime alone, which is the highest paid by the department in at least a decade, according to New York City Open Data, would be enough to cover the salaries of 3 new NYPD officers with the department's starting salary of $58,580. Epps' bloated total compensation even eclipsed her boss's earnings by more than $111,400. Marjorie, who is the top uniform cop, earned $292,069 in fiscal year 24, according to city records. The NYPD's top earner, who is a lieutenant special assignment, raked in the impressive 6-figure income doing administrative tasks in Marjorie's office, such as personnel, according to a source familiar with her role. The revelation enraged the rank and file, putting their lives on the line in the streets. What administrative work requires you to stay there 115 to 120 hours every effing month to apply that type of money? One Bronx cop with 20 years on the job raged to the Post. That's ridiculous for someone who's never in the streets, he added. She doesn't have an arrest, is not even in a position to be dealing with prisoners or courts at all. Epps 51, who worked nearly 1,627 hours of overtimes. Oh my goodness. Plus her regular shifts, or an average of roughly 74 hours of overtime 74 hours per week, records show. Any detective on the street making that kind of money. What about captains or inspectors running commands? Another veteran cop with over 25 years on the job barked. They're not making that kind of money. A 3-time cancer survivor, Epps, overall pay last fiscal year also dwarfed the total compensation of the NYPD's ex-police commissioner, Edward Caban, who earned a total of $288,332 in fiscal year 2024, records show. Other NYPD officials who topped the NYPD payroll last year included Chris Malivio, a 13-year stationary engineer who raked in $389,192.65 by pulling a staggering $200,859 in overtime pay, and Lieutenant John P. Brennan, a 26-year department vet who banked $378,437.62 with $168,132.38 in overtime. That's insane. The stationary engineers always make that much money. I think there's only a couple of them. I think the department only has a few. So for large buildings in New York City, you're supposed to have a stationary engineer there at every one of the building, depending on how the capacity of the building. And they're there should they have to release the fire suppression system, the water suppression system. They're there to run the building. They're basically the lifeline for the building. And I think the department only has very few of them, so they do ginormous amounts of overtime because someone needs to be there on a 24/7 hour basis, 365 days a year. So they've always traditionally been at the top, making tons and tons of overtime.
If you like what you see, like and subscribe. We see a lot of newcomers, new friends, and listen to the podcast. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on this live with John and myself at New York's Finest Unfiltered Podcast. So like and subscribe at this time. If you're on YouTube, if you're on X, repost the space, repost the live. We appreciate it. Let's put it out there. Great comment here by Mikey G, Metal Detecting LI. I guess Metal Detecting Long Island. I remember being sent home from homicide cases where I was close to the cap. So obviously, Mikey G, we're in homicide. We appreciate your service. But here we are, someone who's investigating a homicide. Because he's getting close to the cap, he had to go home, and that case had to suffer. That case had to take a seat back or possibly get handed to the squad sergeant and get new fresh eyes on it because of the overtime cap. And here we have someone in an administrative role. And we're saying that this person is a 3-time cancer survivor. Now, I'm not going to say why, but that's very dear to me that someone has cancer. I've had, and I know there's other people here talking about, I think Patrick Donahue was talking about a family member or a friend that was suffering from cancer from 9/11 in hospice. God bless you and God bless your friend. How could that person with such a disease do so much hours overtime? It's virtually impossible. I think honestly, I'm not trying to brag, but for my age group, I feel like I'm in tip-top shape. I feel fantastic. Same thing for you, John. You're doing 23 pull-ups. I don't think I have the stamina to do these many hours and balance kids, balance a home. I just don't see it to be possible. I mean, clearly the appearance of impropriety is here, and I blame the leadership. It's always the leadership of the police department. Driver's seat. Shout out to you. $10 at a podcast. We get more coffee and donuts over here. Share with us. We appreciate it. Why weren't you guys exposing all the abuse and corruption when the Italians and Irish ran things? Listen, we're very critical of leadership when it comes to any group. We've spoke many times on this podcast about prior mistakes of past administrations. Absolutely. We still continue speaking, but we talk about the Irish right now. We talk about the old male, pale, stale white guys at the upper echelon of police department that are cowards that don't say what's going on right now because they're self-serving. Some of these Irish guys have paved the way for nepotism, and we see it's far more egregious right now because they learn from them. We see Dermot Shea, the former police commissioner, pave the way for his son. We see other police commissioners pave the way for their offspring. Absolutely. We do talk about it. We talk about every group. And we're not trying to box anyone in and label them, this is the blacks and this Dominicans and this the Irish. We're talking about failed administrations, failed leadership. And right now, the leadership that we see right now is far more egregious than we've ever seen before. I can't think of someone prior that has received $400,000 in compensation as a lieutenant. Obviously, salaries are higher at this point. But again, this is just so blatant. And this administration is by far the most appearance of impropriety I've ever seen.
I think incompetence and mismanagement can't be understated here either when we look at it overall. But yeah, driver's seat, exposing the corruption when the Italians and the Irish ran things. So the Finest Unfiltered was founded 2 years ago. YouTube channel came out about a year ago. Myself and Eric weren't really aware of it. We were younger. We didn't see everything. We had our complaints and we were on the job. And then, the way things happened, I mean, again, the NYPD created this. Eric Adams created the Finest Unfiltered. I don't think he's realized it yet. I don't think John Shell, Kaz Daughtry have realized that they were the fuel behind this platform, behind all of you guys coming out online on social media, and creating your own platforms and speaking about what's going on, not only in the NYPD, but in politics, and weighing in on the media and giving a fair voice to the rank and file, which is traditionally something they've never had. The unions have failed miserably at doing that. And we've actually exposed that they don't do that they actually work hand in hand with the administrations and with the elected. So, I mean, I laugh when people say that all the time. Oh, what about what Esposito and them did? Listen, I'd love to have Schoolcraft on here to tell his story. I'd love to have the kid that we spoke about that was mad that we read the wrong article out. I'd love to have him on, tell his story. We're not sitting here hiding anyone. We're just reporting the news. We're talking about it. We're giving our respective and long form. The only knock that we get is that we're two disgruntled guys, and the other knock that we get is that we have a bone to pick. We have something to pick with this administration. Couldn't be further from the truth. I've said it 1,000 times. You could come to my home. We could sit down. Let's have a real conversation. I don't have any hate in my heart for anybody. I don't. There's no one that I think of on a daily basis and I feel hate for at all. I think situations are wrong. I made a vow to myself when I left my career that I was going to say about what happened, the things I see wrong and the things I see wrong in the political landscape. And that's what I've been doing. And so is Eric. That's exactly what he did. He said, I'm going to tell everybody why I lost my career and why it's wrong, so it never happens to anybody else. And again, this is a new version of media. It's a new version of media. People have not seen two cops who are expressive, who are articulate, come out here and identify the issues and speak on behalf of what those issues are and what's causing them, instead of just hearing it's the bail reform. Crime's up because it's the bail reform. It's the bail. You got to back the blue. What should we do, sir? What should we do to help the cops? Just thank a cop when you see them. Just thank a cop. No, I mean, there are plenty of NYPD podcasts out there, and the reason nobody listens to them is because that's exactly why. And then the other thing that they would try to paint us as is that we're a openly racist platform. I mean, it's insane. It's only based upon the color of our skin. That's it. It has nothing else to do. The assertion that this is an openly racist platform is a racist comment in itself, because the only thing you have to make about that is the fact of the color of our skins. And by the way, most of the people that are calling me a racist, I'm darker than. So it's a joke. It's a complete joke.
Like John said earlier, I agree. We're narrating. It's almost like a sporting event, right? You see football players right? Quarterback comes out. What do? They talk about the next generation, right? They're quarterbacking. They're giving their perspective. They're narrating. Joe Rogan narrates UFC. We're narrating police work. So you know what? If you don't like what we're saying, if you think what we're saying is hate, if you don't like because we're commenting on the plays, then make better plays. So that's the bottom line, right? It's fair leadership right now. We're giving our critique. We're giving our perspective. There's no hate in our heart. We said it numerous times. We give our critique perspective because we love the police department. We love the profession, right? I started out speaking out in retirement because I don't want someone else to become the most complaint cop. I don't want someone else to have to make that decision where they're going to go with their career. And because you're being attacked by an overzealous civilian complaint review board, because you can no longer do what you're paid and trained to do. Jon had to make a substantial decision. We don't want others to have to make those decisions where you're going in your career when you're not ready to, or vice versa, and stand up for others. Now, at this point, 2 years in retirement, I'm happy I'm here. I'm blessed. I say it, Jon says all the time, he's blessed also. We've had this opportunity. It's opened new doors. I've been doing so much traveling, competing in jiu-jitsu. I love it. I get to meet new people, friends and listeners, podcasts. People I've actually met from doing this podcast has been amazing. Sal Greco says, I once worked 95 hours of overtime in a month at a time when 130 was the cap. With all the training in the gym and 30 miles running a week, I felt that for 2 months. Absolutely. Here's Sal Greco, still in fantastic shape. Still should be on the job. Phenomenal shape. Takes care of himself. Gym rat. Really into fitness, working hard, and even he's saying he was exhausted to the point that his body couldn't recover for 2 months. Sal, shout out to you, brother. Absolutely. I mean, I feel the same way. When you work extensive amount of overtime, you're not getting proper sleep, you start to pay for it. The oil, the candle burns on both ends. So absolutely. And that's what we're speaking about here. There's no hate here. If giving our perspective and opinion is hate, well, then you have some serious problems. And you have to look at yourself and analyze yourself. Can you actually take criticism? How can you actually be critical of others when you're in a position of leadership when you can't handle criticism upon yourself?
Yeah. People on here saying Tony Gambino says, rip Michael Jordan. Sad news this morning. I'm not seeing that, Tony. If you could send that to us. I don't see that anywhere. I think someone else even said it too. Rip MJ. I hopefully not. I hope you're wrong about that, but I'm not seeing that anywhere. So if you could send that to us, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've been looking, Jon. Also, because I saw a couple of comments and I didn't acknowledge it because I didn't know if what's going on here. I mean, I hope not. I'm looking it up. I love Michael Jordan. I hope this is not the case. So please keep us updated if you see anything.
Yeah, that's wow. Crazy. I actually, I for those of you that don't, I used to I was bad with sneakers. I couldn't afford them when I was a kid. So then when I started work, and I started working pretty early on in life, I just had this obsession with Jordans because I couldn't get them, the 3s, the 4s, and the 5s. And then when I got in my when I got in my 20s, probably by the time I was working in the police department, I had so many sneakers that I was like, this is the dumbest thing ever. I'm like, I don't even wear any of these. I can't even wear them. There's so many sneakers, I have thousands and thousands of dollars sitting here. So I started in my early 20s. What I started doing is every time I wanted to buy a pair of Jordans, when I seen it come out, I would just put the money in stocks. I would put the money in my trading account, right? And I would just buy a blue chip stock. Best thing I ever did. If you're a young dude and a girl and you're into buying fashionable things, I highly recommend you do that. You could thank me in 10, 20 years from now. Don't sell the stocks, put them in blue chips, leave it in, buy the S&P, buy the Dow. And then, on the days that it dips, on the bad days when everybody's scared and they're all going crazy, buy on those days, take the money, put it in the account. But I recently was I haven't bought sneakers in a long time. So I bought a pair of Jordan 5s. I think I paid $250 for them. And then the next day, the Jordan 3s came out, the cement ones, the black ones. And I don't know why. I got a notification on my phone. I have no idea why. I never do. And I was and they're this sale just comes up. They just put them back out with the original with the Nike Air in the back and all that. So I spent another $250 2 days in a row. So I just bought $500 worth of Jordan sneakers actually this weekend. And I hope that's not, I hated Michael Jordan for such a long time because I was a diehard Knicks fan. And when he retired, even the first time, I was like, wow, I was like, I don't think we're ever going to see a guy like this again. Like, and it was right. I was right. And then when he came back, I still hated him, but I had a lot of respect for him. A lot of respect for him. And I still do. So I hope that news is false. But let's get further on this. We got 827 people on here. We're talking about the top earner in the NYPD, $400,000 NYPD lieutenant. We're going through the New York Post article.
You know what's interesting to me, John, before we get into the article, it's interesting to me that we're considered to have hate in our heart and that, we're racist because we're actually commenting on what everyone else is saying in the locker room. I assume right now that everyone's talking about this in the locker room. I highly doubt that everyone's going to say, wow, I'm out there busting my hump. I got boots on in freezing weather. I'm sweating out there in the heat. I could barely scratch at 10 hours overtime a month. My commanding officer chewed me out because I had a couple hours. And here someone had made $400,000 in an administrative role. I think this completely just rips through the entire department and destroys morale. We talk about morale. That is so important right now. 25% of the job is actually looking to leave. I'm sure those numbers are far worse. Why would you stay in this police department right now? You're saying to yourself, if I'm not close to the king, and it proves what we've been saying on this podcast, solidifies when we say there's a three-tiered system. It's the upper echelon, and John, you're absolutely right. She would be considered upper echelon. She's close to the kings. Upper echelon with those ties to nepotism. She's up at the upper echelon because of her ties of nepotism and where she actually works. You have khaki pants and then everyone else in general population. Look, we have Mikey G talking about when he was in homicide, couldn't be thorough with the case because of the cap. And we know the cap is usually 40, 50, sometimes 55 when it comes to the squad. And here's someone that far exceeds that on a weekly basis. This is absolutely egregious. Again, this is appearance of impropriety. And who is surrounded by it? Every time we look at nepotism, it always appears to be Chief Madry. He's always at the center. It's like he's the 7 degrees of separation from him to Adams and the rest of the department that's tied by nepotism. Absolutely insane. This is egregious. We should give our perspective about this. Again, there are other podcasts out there. They're going to give you back to blue, hug a cop, thank a cop, right? They'll talk to bosses. Thank you so much. You're such a great leader. And we're going to give you the actual real perspective of what people are really saying, what they're thinking, but we're saying it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, always, I think, Jeffrey Madry sits in the background smiling. He's nice to everyone. I think, but when you look at all of the abuses in the New York City Police Department, all of the monsters that have been created, they call themselves the Gotham Brothers. They call themselves the Dream Team. I like to call them Madry's monsters. I think that, he's created a lot of the problems that you're seeing. So again, in total, there were 392 NYPD employees who pocketed at least $100,000 in overtime in this past fiscal year, the records show. So 392 people, out of, roughly 26,000 people, something like that. 26 to 30,000, whatever you want to say. That's the top tier, right? Those are the people. Those are the people that are in the inner circle. And I think, when we look at that, you got to look at not only does it affect the rank and file and affect the ability for the police department to function properly, but you also got to look at we're taxing New Yorkers at a ginormous rate. You're taxing New York City residents at a ginormous rate. They just Kathy Hochul, as not only us that have predicted on the show, but I think basically everyone besides the New York Democrats, besides the New York Republicans, because they were all celebrating. If you don't remember, we did a show about that. We showed you all the New York City Republicans celebrating. We won when Kathy Hochul postponed congestion pricing, and now she's putting congestion pricing in at $9 and touting it as it's a savings. So you're going to get taxed $9 more to commute, but it's a huge savings for you. But don't worry, in 2030, it's going to go up to I forget the amount of money. It's going to probably double, I think, something like that in 2030. So it's not a savings, it's a tax. And so New Yorkers are getting taxed. And what they're seeing is the police department is not effective as it was in years past. It's just not. And that's the truth of the matter. Well, are arrests up? Yes. Are gun confiscations up? Yes. Those are not good things. Those are highlights and failures in public safety. Is it the NYPD's fault? No. It's the fault of the elected. It's the fault of emasculating not only the New York City Police Department, but the criminal justice system as a whole, but common sense as a whole. So, I mean, when we look at all of those things, people are like, wait a minute. Eric Adams told me he was going to get all the cops out of administrative units and he was going to get them out there on the street. And not only has he not done that, he's put more people in administrative units, and now they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars in overtime. It's insane.
I think sometimes in New York, it's like a prison when you drive in these streets. It's like an obstacle course. You know, you got to avoid this toll, avoid this red light, these speed cameras that are all over the place. Thank God right now I've been traveling, and I haven't had to see it throughout the entire country. But it's just an abomination. It's ridiculous. It's a prison.
Yeah, it's wild. So let's finish the article real quick. At a heated city council budget hearing in May, the NYPD's top brass attributed at least $168 million in unplanned overtime pay to policing anti-Israel protests and migrant shelters. Employees are always going to get overtime because the alternative is to have too many employees, said Ken Giergarten, research director at the conservative watchdog Empire Center for Public Policy. But public employees, especially in an operation as large as the NYPD, shouldn't be getting $100,000 in overtime. That shows something is fundamentally broken. Epps justified her voluminous overtime and earnings with the fact that she juggles more than one role in the department, but referred to the NYPD's Public Information Office for clarity on her responsibilities. I'm a really good lady. I do really positive things, she said. The NYPD did not respond to the post request for comment. And then, the only thing I got to say to you is that I think everybody in the New York City Police Department juggles multiple roles, so I don't think that actually justifies anything. And then when we look at the amount of money to sit there and say that nobody should make $100,000 in overtime, I don't know that that's a fair statement, depending on the amount of money. I think what New Yorkers should concern themselves with, especially as inflation will always rise. When we look at this, if we look at this interview or this podcast 20 years from now, $100,000 isn't going to seem like a lot of money anymore in overtime. So I think what should be honed in on is the hours. What is the amount of hours somebody could physically do to sustain a long career in the NYPD? And that should be what there should be the cap is, right? What could you do to keep you physically and mentally healthy? I think we could all say right now that to do that amount of overtime, 1,600 hours in overtime, is not healthy for you physically or mentally, if it's even possible, right? And so then if we look at that, what is the amount of overtime that actually is possible? And then who should get that? I don't think that should be up to the New York City Police Department. I think that should be up to the taxpayers. And I think what the taxpayers are going to say is they want people that are out on the street providing public safety, or the people that are in long-term investigative assignments that are putting criminals behind bars, that are partaking in the core function of policing. I think that's what New Yorkers are going to say. I mean, I still pay New York City taxes. That's what I say. I don't think and again, I understand if anyone's ever spoken out, I was the guy who sat here and I fought for all of the administrative cops because they're out on the street 3 days a week anyway, and they're providing important functions in the New York City Police Department. So I'm never saying that they shouldn't make overtime or they should all get kicked out of their assignments. Like I said, Eric Adams had no plan to do that. I'm like, okay, how are you doing that? Like, why are you doing that? Is it smart to do that? And meanwhile, not only did he not do that, he doubled down on what he said was a problem. So
Arbed, my brother, thank you so much. Arbed is always a great friend to the podcast, has helped me out numerous times with technical issues. Arbed, thank you so much. $9.99 to the podcast. More coffee and donuts. He says, I love to buy my favorite lieutenants a cup of coffee and donuts. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. But need to see your vax papers first. Of course, You can likely obtain documents from a certain viewer here in chat. Absolutely. We know who those viewers in this chats are, right? Juju has fermented himself into different handles over here, and he's got a team of trolls. Outstanding. Snake Plissken, $4.99 to the podcast. Driver's seat, get a life. Thank you so much. Wow. So I got to find out what's going on here in the chat. Outstanding.
No, that was he's commenting about driver's seat, saying why weren't we exposing the Italian and the Irish?
Oh yeah.
And all bad's talking about a YouTube user. We know who you are. We know who you are, you bum cop who's sitting on it. Thank you for watching.
Get this bum out. What a bum. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, absolutely drives. I think we're pretty fair. We give a fair assessment. Again, when the Irish have a stronghold, we weren't around. We were working. Different story. We're narrating now in retirement. You look at sports, right? I mean, your sportscasters, they narrate, during their retirement. So kind of the same thing. I think we spoke about. John, you nailed it. Absolutely, I agree. As you look at inflation, salaries change. At some point, it's not going to be a big deal to be a $300,000 a year lieutenant as salaries increase and as we get with inflation. The key is to look, and you nailed it, is to hone in on the hours. How can someone be a productive member of the service working? I think it comes out to about 120 hours a month, according to this article. I have those numbers different, I have to be honest. I think it's even far worse. I think the numbers are a little off when I look at this article here. So I think it's even more hours than what they have said in this article. How can someone be a productive member, and how can they have high performance working so many hours? It's virtually impossible, especially here we have a female lieutenant. I would assume she probably has a family. How is she taking care of kids, taking care of a home, possibly a husband? Well, I don't know what her case is. Taking care of a family and working at one police plaza so many hours, it's just not possible. And we all know it. Let's not play pretend, and let's try to figure out how to skin a cat at different rates when it comes to this lieutenant. It's completely egregious. We all know it. Anyone that's active or retired, NYPD or another agency, or if you're a civilian and you're just working in your occupation, it's virtually impossible to do so many hours and consistently be a productive member. It's just, you need rest. We all do. We need rest. We need time to reset. And what about vacations? According to my man, she couldn't even take vacations. She couldn't even take days off. So, again, there's a lot of questions here. She's close to the king. She's close to nepotism. Madry is responsible. He has created monsters. It also solidifies and opens that door to ask those questions we've been saying. Right? Rumor has it that Madry sat inside for an entire year studying to become a lawyer, to be an esquire, while employed, while working for the New York City Police Department. And it looks as though everyone else is doing Madry's job. This lieutenant, Kaz Daughtry, Tariq Shepard, are picking up slack for Chief Madry. Jeffrey Madry, he's a bum. Get that bum out. He's created all these monsters. Of course, people say, oh, he's nice to the public. He seems to be more reasonable. Of course he has to be reasonable. He has to be nice. He has all these skeletons in the closet. He has had 9 lives when it comes to the police department. He's surrounded by the appearance of impropriety. He's a bum. Get him out. And I seen what he's done to people. I seen him bounce a lieutenant from the NST team training for asking questions. That lieutenant was bounced to another command within seconds because he was asking questions. Madry, bum. He needs to go.
I mean, so the bottom line is this, bottom line is this. Should there be an investigation into not only her, but the top 392 earners in the NYPD? Should there be an investigation by city council for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. To see if funds are being mismanaged when it comes to the police department. We already have an appearance of impropriety with this particular administration. We have a corruption probe going on as we speak that involves former police commissioner Ed Caban. It involves stems throughout the entire police department. It has to do with 301s, a potential racketeering scheme. We have the appearance of impropriety when it comes to money being seized by Sheriff Miranda and the sheriff's office that has the connection to the police department. We see the appearance of impropriety when it comes to promotions. We see nepotism so egregious right now with this administration. There must be an investigation at this point. Do I want to see people get in trouble for doing their job, sergeant? No, but I don't hold them liable and I don't hold them responsible. I hold the leaders and the management responsible for mismanagement of funds, mismanagement of money. People are out there trying to do their job. And they can't because they're capped at 20 hours, capped at 30 hours. They have to explain every hour that they're working. And then we have other people that completely, it's abusive, making $400,000 because it's convenient because they're retiring. I mean, how much money do you really need to make? It's so abusive. It's so blatant at this point that clearly they don't care if they get caught and if this is in the public eye, because they know at this point nothing is going to happen. As long as Eric Adams is there, they feel that they're safe.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think they are. I think it's fair enough to say that they're safe. I think if you are rank and file member of the New York City Police Department and you get an arrest and your sergeant feels that you're milking it or you're taking too long on your vouchers, you're going to have a big problem. Could potentially even get fired for overtime abuse. So I think the mismanagement in the NYPD is clearly highlighted. I don't think the city council is going to do a damn thing about it either. I think they will bark at a hearing. You'll see some type of, it'll fly around the media for a little bit and then it'll be over. Because this has happened forever, right? And that's the thing that most people that defend this. Oh, the corruption's always been there. The nepotism's always been there. Okay, so does that mean that we shouldn't do anything about it? Good thing Rudy Giuliani didn't have that same take on the mafia when he was the U.S. District Attorney, right? Or else the mafia would still be controlling every union. You wouldn't be able to open up a business without paying them in New York City, get a construction project done. The police department would still be systemically corrupt from the top to the bottom, not just like at the top like it is now. So the Italian mafia would still control all of New York City, if not for someone saying, yeah, it's wrong and we got to do something about it. So I think, as things come more into the public eye, social media, podcasts, media changing, you're going to see that. You're going to see things going away more from the corporate media to you're going to see things going into the public eye where the public's going to say, no, this is wrong. I want to fix it. This is not how I want my tax dollars going. This is not the laws I want the police department to enforce. I don't want them breaking down people's doors for a squirrel in the guy's house that he takes care of. And I don't want my police department shaking down businesses and helping to run a consulting business. So that the people can't get tickets or get out of tickets or cover up crimes and all types of horrible acts by other people. So I think, although it's always happened, doesn't mean that it's right. And I think that people deserve to make overtime in their career, especially when they're in high profile positions where there's a lot demanded of them. They shouldn't have to work for free. You shouldn't have to. I mean, it's in your contract. You're not a salaried employee. You're an employee where you get overtime. You give that up when you be going to the discretionary promotions to deputy inspector. You can get a little bit while you're in the rank of captain. But I think people ultimately deserve to make money, and you should be compensated. I do think a lot of people in the NYPD currently still don't get compensated for all the work they put in. And I believe myself too. I don't think I took every dollar overtime or every slip where I should have took time for. I didn't do that. And I think a lot of people do that. And I think when we look across the board at all public servants, teachers, nurses, I think when we look around the board, you're going to see a lot of people that put in time for their profession that they never get compensated for. So when people see that every second of my day is being compensated for, it starts to raise an eyebrow. And then obviously this lieutenant makes the top of the list. So she's the one that gets pointed out, right? It's not like the guy that's right behind her is any less, that overtime's any less egregious at all. Like who's the lieutenant? The Lieutenant Brennan or whatever his name is. Doesn't matter. It's still the same thing. People are enraged about it. But let's, honest conversation. If my boss allowed me to make 80, 90, 100 hours overtime a month, I'm doing it too. Nobody's sitting here and saying we're not. Now, I'm not going to be taking overtime when I'm on my couch. I'm not going to take overtime when I'm not at work. I'm not going to do any of those things. But if you're going to say, hey, John, you could stay at work 100 hours of overtime this month, I'm going to stay at work 100 hours of overtime this month. It just is. If I could do it, I'm going to do it. But I'm also going to take my 5 weeks vacation, and I'm probably going to take a couple of days off here and there. So I don't know that I'll be able to do that every month. But if I can, while I'm at work, while I'm doing my duties, why wouldn't I? And I think the same's true for everyone on here, whether you're mad about this or you're not mad about it or you're defending it. Let's be honest. If you're allowed to make more money, why wouldn't you? I spoke about it last episode. I always looked at the overtime as you're leaving money on the table, right? Hey, John, you want to go work on Sunday? I never really did, but I'm like, yeah. Because it's like I always thought of it like that. You're leaving money out there on the table. It's going towards your pension. It's going towards your ITHP, your 50% additional. Ultimately, it's more money for you and your family down the road, for your children down the road, for you to provide a good life for your family. I'm not going to fault any worker that does that. What I've been saying, and I think what Eric's been saying as well, is that the dysfunctional system comes by way of the mismanagement and incompetence of the Eric Adams appointed administration and the management up top. They're completely incompetent. And their experience dictates that they shouldn't be where they are. That's it.
I'm not blaming her at all. I said that before on this episode, and I'll say it again. I've said it before in conversations I had yesterday about this. I'm not holding her responsible. If I had the opportunity to make $400,000, just as you said before, John, if I had the opportunity to make $500,000, I would absolutely take that opportunity. The question is, would I actually be able to do it? Would I have the stamina or the ability to actually do so many hours and actually be able to get home, just traveling back and forth? Would I be able to actually take weeks off of vacation? Would I actually be able to take any days off? And virtually it seems to be impossible. So that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about her. The one thing I will say, I think what she did stupidly was actually make a comment about saying, just make a comment in general. I think she would have been better off not making a comment and say, you know what, speak to my leadership about this. Because she said, though, she's valuable and, what she does a good job. No one's not saying she doesn't do a good job. We're not saying that she's not valuable. But what we're saying, this is completely egregious. It isn't virtually mentally and physically possible to do this. I do believe if you work in so many hours, this will lead to depression. We wouldn't see such a smile on her face. Absolutely not. And she wouldn't be so excited about it. I think this is, if anything, if she is a cancer survivor 3 times, God bless her, this is kind of like a form of abuse to work so many hours. Why do we not have other people that are trained as well to give her some time off to relax and heal? I mean, that's absolutely insane. I don't think it's impossible. Again, I was the same way as you, John. If they gave me an opportunity, hey, Saturday to come in for 12 hours and Sunday coming again for 12 hours on your days off, or whatever the case is, I was Sunday, Monday, RDOs, days off. I'm taking that opportunity. Absolutely, I'm going to take it. I'm going to work myself to the point of exhaustion, right? We have kids, we have families. The more money we have, the more money that we can take care of our families. Absolutely, that's why we work. Our band, shout out to you, $19.99 for the podcast. The second time you donate today. Thank you so much. More coffee and donuts. He says, sending DoorDash with donuts, cheap whiskey, and Diddy Diddlers over to Chubby Shell. Chubby, that's a nice, that's pretty much a compliment. After his accidental, aka negligent, slaying of the 25-year-old innocent citizen, how thorough was the investigation and CDS screening? Absolutely. I'm very curious. I have a lot of questions about that investigation. And if you see this article where a detective actually says in particular that case still haunts him to this day. Anon Mayer, shout out to you, brother. Anon Mayer, actually a great friend to the podcast, joined in on a couple of X Spaces with John and myself. Very articulate, really insightful. Thank you to you, $9.99 to the podcast. More coffee and donuts this morning. Great breakfast here. I've said it before. I disagree with some of your takes, but you guys doing what you're doing is so important. Breaking the blue wall breaks everyone in. Makes New York City better and stronger. Absolutely. That's the point of this, Anon, man. Thank you so much. Is that we all have perspective. We all have opinions. We all have different anecdotal experience. And somewhere we can meet at the middle of the road and compromise. Okay, listen, I understand the root causes of your mindset. I understand the root causes. And let's come somewhere that's compromisable. It's somewhere in the middle that makes sense for everyone. And that's what this is about. We shouldn't hate anyone else's opinions, but what we see from the trolls, what we see from the upper echelon of the police department is the appearance of impropriety, which is why, in my opinion, is the contributing factor to the attack on this podcast is because not necessarily John and I are just giving our opinions, but we're actually giving a perspective on real appearance of impropriety and actual corruption probe. We've talked about the corruption probe that we see. We also talked about the 511 pants that has not been mentioned in the news yet. That has an appearance of impropriety. They're just one thing after another, riddled with appearance of negativity and nepotism that equates to corruption. And what we see, what's going on with this lieutenant, other members of the police department, they're not to blame. They took the opportunity that was presented. It's the management and the leadership that that is to blame, and there absolutely should be a probe and see if the upper management is also abusing their employees so that they don't have to do any work themselves. So there's a lot of different angles and layers to peel back here. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for supporting. And non-man, thank you for being on the live. We appreciate it. Abed, love you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's all we're doing, right? We're just having conversations, and like, our takes. I'm not sitting here, and Eric's not sitting here saying this is what you got to believe. Don't listen to them. I'm not at all. I think we've invited everybody on here, anyone, and what we get consistently is people like YouTube user or all these fake names, Juju, or this new clown, Gene Lewis, who I highly think is John Shell. I would actually bet money on it that it is, and I think I would be, and we spoke about that before. But like, all they do is slander us. JM, you're a quitter. Your pension sucks. Was it worth it? Share with your followers your resume. It's not good. You, like everyone else, took 40 hours a month with a car. Now you claim to be an expert in policing. You're a fraud. Share with us your expertise, bail reform, pursuits, protests, and everything else. John, share with us how you would fix this. I mean, I think I've done that for you. I think I've done that for you a long time, John Shell. And then and basically what I said, so if that's the case, you should be able to sit down with us. You should be able to sit down with either us or one-on-one and expose that we don't know what we're talking about. I mean, I don't think it's hard, and that's the same for people that disagree with the takes. We welcome the nonsensical comments, and we welcome we really want to have the larger conversations, right? I think my two favorite podcasts that we did, I think when we sat down with Cop Watch, audio was absolutely terrible. I'd like to do that again. I thought that was a productive interview. And then when we sat down with Edwin Raymond, I thought it was great to go over his book and to get his thoughts on broken windows. And I'd like to do more of that. I'd like to have a lot more opposition on this podcast. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of people that want to come on here. And, so it kind of could appear to be an echo chamber at times, but I think the only way we could alleviate that, and I get the people that don't want to come on here because they don't want to expose who they are, because it'll ultimately have a detrimental effect on their life, their career, their earning ability. I understand that, because obviously you've seen what's been done to us. We've been blackballed out of the industry. But I think the way that we alleviate that is with doing these lives, with the chat, bringing it to comments, to questions, and we don't shy away from it. Unlike when we get to the NYPD, when we get to the NYPD unions, what they do is they don't respond to comments or questions if they even allow them. And most of their platforms, they don't allow comments, questions, reshares, any of that. So what they do is then they come on with these fake names and they just throw slanderous claims and things like and things like that, where it just doesn't make sense. And it's what's basically happened is this system got exposed. I think that this platform had a big hand in it. But whether I was a cop or I was never a cop, or you were never a cop, or you don't even live in New York City, why can't you have a position on what bail reform, how you think bail reform? Why can't you have a position on the protest settlement agreement? Why can't you have a position on cops kicking down someone's door because they had a squirrel in their house? Your opinion matters, regardless if I agree with you or not. I believe my opinion matters. I believe the person who I disagree with's opinion matters. And I think somewhere in there's probably some good things that could come out of that.
Shout out to Ron Layson. Good morning, my brother. He put out an OMO for John. If anybody wanted to know, hashtag OMO. That's opposition meets opportunity. We got Ron Layson keeping a tally of all the one-liners and things that we say in this podcast. If you check out was it EDW? No, not EDW. EDMA, Eric DeMarines. So OMO, opposition meets opportunity. Absolutely. So listen, the bottom line is this. I don't think this podcast is an echo chamber at all, because we're willing to have conversations with people that have opposition, polarizing views, and we're willing to meet somewhere in the middle. And we don't have disagreements and arguments to the point that we're trying to win an argument on this podcast. We allow, if you listen to the conversation, which I think is probably one of the best conversations we had in this podcast, we had a conversation with Evan Raymond. There's a lot of stuff we agree, disagree, or somewhere in the middle, and we didn't have an argument. We didn't try to overstep his point of view. He didn't try to overstep our point of view. The idea is not to win an argument. The idea is to hear the root causes of his mindset, hear the root causes of our mindset, talk about our own anecdotal experience, compare it to the data, and somewhere meet in the middle that it makes common sense. It makes common sense for everyone. Somewhere that it makes sense, right? That's how successful people win. You can learn from others that actually are disagreeable to you, but somewhere we have to be agreeable to be disagreeable and disagreeable to be agreeable. So we come with somewhere in the middle. Does that mean we should all be cheering each other on? And if we don't agree with it, say, oh, that's fantastic. Well, that's a lie. And that's what we hear from other podcasts. When people come on other podcasts, oh, that's fantastic. That's amazing. But no, if you actually don't agree with it, then say, well, you know what? That's not my point of view. Here's my point of view, and I see your perspective. And somewhere, let's meet in the middle. And that's what this is about. So shout out to you, Ron Layson. We appreciate it. EDMA, Eric Den Martial Artist. I love it. Thank you so much, Ron Layson. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and again, the people that put in the policies, like we're capping you. You're in intel. You're capped at 15 hours a month. If you go to details, you can make more. You're in the squad. You can make 30 hours a month. You're in this unit or this bureau. You can only make this, or you can't make this. Whatever it is, the people that are instituting those policies aren't adhering to it themselves, and I think that's when you see that you get a lot of the fervor. So, but ultimately, I feel that there does need to be a thorough investigation done. I just have no faith that there will be one. There's been investigations done before. Patrick Donahue alluded to it before. There was a lieutenant who was actually arrested for it. And if we're not there, then it just shows exactly what we've been saying about the New York City Police Department. They're not transparent. They're highly incompetent, and they're easily corruptible. And that's what it appears to be. The upper echelon of the New York City Police Department today remains the same as it did. I still have no idea why Ed Caban had to step down if Eric Adams doesn't, and why the rest of them didn't. Why is Jeffrey Madry still in place? Why is John Schell still in place? Why is Kaz Daughtry still in place? Doesn't make sense to me. Why is Tanya Kinsella? Makes no sense to me. And what we see, what was happening, it trickles down everywhere. And again, you're going to see more things that are going to raise your eyebrows and be like, what? And Patrick Donahue said, I think what you're going to see is that there was going to be authorized overtime from home. And again, I think then when we go back to that mandate, there were people working from home, or the people working home because they're sick. And then why wasn't I given the option of working from home? Why wasn't I given the option of working home? Why did I have to leave my career over it? Why wasn't Marlon Bethel given the option of working from home? Why was he terminated? Why weren't we just allowed to wait out till it wasn't as bad anymore? We found out that the thing that you wanted us to do didn't even do what it said to do. So just crazy times, crazy things in New York City, and in the New York City Police Department. So, anything else on that before we get off of it?
No, I think we nailed it home. That's the bottom line. It's important to give opinion and perspective. The appearance of impropriety is there. It doesn't seem virtually impossible. It doesn't seem possible to actually do so many hours of overtime. It's completely egregious. It doesn't matter whether, even if you're out in the street, it's virtually impossible to do all those kind of hours. And how, every police officer, every rank, every member of the service is valuable. I know that's her argument, that she's valuable, doing a good job. And no one's saying that she's not. But at some point, it has to be egregious. And when you're doing too much overtime to the point of exhaustion and to the point of it's questionable if you could actually perform, and if your production could stay at a high level, how valuable are you now? If you're being stretched so thin to the point of exhaustion, you're not valuable anymore. So I think that's completely that's a complete lie to say she's valuable. To do so many hours, you're not useful anymore. Is overtime necessary? Absolutely. Should you be awarded and recognized for your hard work? And should you be awarded overtime, especially because you're close to overtime and you're a good standing member of the service? Absolutely. Should you take on more responsibility and role so that you get that overtime? Absolutely. But it has to be manageable and it has to make sense. This is absolutely ridiculous. We all know it. It should be a full investigation. One, to determine that it was proper and it's not corrupt, and also to determine, is it actually manageable? There should be some type of study. How much overtime is it a point of exhaustion? What is manageable? What is something that makes sense? So on that note, let's get right into this, brother.
Yeah, so Kathy Hochul celebrating the clean slate bill. So what's clean slate? This is coming out from the Progressive Light in New York, also known as the Republicans, Senate Republicans in New York. Hochul and the Democrats, clean slate bill, a victory for criminals, a loss for public safety. One, it automatically seals the records of individual convicted of felonies, including violent crimes such as assault, robbery, and even manslaughter. Two, will place undue strain on law enforcement resources as they monitor offenders. Three, it will make it more difficult for employers to make informed hiring decisions as they will no longer to be able to see an applicant's full criminal history. Four, it makes it more difficult for landlords to protect their tenants as they will no longer be able to see a tenant's full criminal history. Now, I see good and I see bad in it. One, do people deserve second chances? Absolutely, they do. So why do New York City police officers not get that same favor done for them? So people change. I think after a certain amount of time, people's criminal records get expunged, even for some egregious crimes, like they said, robbery. I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. But when we fast forward over to the New York City Police Department, just take a look at Eric Dim's 50A. Go to his 50A, type in Eric Dim. That will, for eternity, remain out there, public info for you to look up. Most of the charges that they charged Eric Dim with, he was found not guilty of, yet they remain there. The accusations remain. And again, these are administrative charges. They're not even criminal. So why is Eric Dim's, or every cop in New York City, disciplinary record, and sometimes not even disciplinary record, just what they were accused of, accessible to the public for eternity? But we have people who are out there robbing people, and after a certain amount of time, it gets cleared. Where it doesn't make sense to me. Like the things don't add up to me. It's like, okay, I could kind of see what you're saying about clean slate, but then why doesn't the police officers get the same? Make it make sense, because it doesn't make sense to me.
Well said, brother. We've been talking about this, and I totally agree. We evolve. I'm sure, look at Mike Tyson, for instance, a 58-year-old man, boxing, a legend. He was not the same man in that ring as he was when he was 20, when he was 19 years old. And when he was 19 years old and he won the championship, he's not the same person physically. He's not the same mentally. We all change. We all evolve, and times change also. So, again, I think this is complete hypocrisy right now. What is a standard? And I agree. People deserve a second chance. Some people deserve a third chance. You do your time. You should not suffer in society. If you paid your debt to society, you should be given a second chance. You should have an opportunity. I understand the clean slate. The clean slate gives people an opportunity to make money, gives them an opportunity to get housing, right? This is one of the arguments we've always heard for years, is that when people do their time and they come out of jail, because of their record, they can't get a fruitful job. They can't get housing. They can't get themselves in these positions to actually start to be a fruitful member of society, and they go back to criminal activity. So I understand it. But again, the hypocrisy is Eric Dim, who's the most complained cop, according to the 58, is public record, and that will be there forever until we can fight this, and hopefully we can change it one day. And that's what we're doing here right now at New York's Finest Time to Flip the Podcast. But until then, if you look at someone's 58, it's not only substantiations, but it's actually just allegations. And again, if you look at my case, I actually won some of those cases. I was found not guilty, and those allegations still remain on that 58. So it makes you unattractable in your law enforcement career and actually afterwards. So if I was out there right now, I'm not out looking for work, but if I was out looking for a job, immediately there's going to be a scrub of my social media. That's going to come up, and there's going to be a lot of questions, and that will make me unattractable to an employer, especially someone who's in the public eye. And if they don't understand police work, if I decide to take another avenue, there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of doubt. So right now, I feel at this point, I'm 2 years of retirement, and I have created distance from myself from that moniker of the most complained cop. But again, that's always something that's going to be there. It's like getting an allegation of rape. It's a stigma that you don't want there, and it's tough to lose. So again, there should be a clean slate for police officers also. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't make sense. Like, things don't make sense to me. Like, and that's what we've been exploring, right? It doesn't make sense to me that you're in one hand, you're alleviating people who've been convicted of crimes, and you're saying, okay, you should get a second chance. And I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I agree you should get a second chance. But guess what? Oh, but you're a cop, and these administrative things, you got found guilty of wearing white socks when you were supposed to have black socks. That's going to stay on your record forever. So every time I go to get a job, every time you go to get a job, every time if you submit an application to a landlord, they get to see everything about Eric Dim. They're like, oh my God, Eric Dim was accused of sticking his finger up somebody's rectum. Oh my God, that he does look like a creep. He has weird fingers. You know, he's got weird fingers. I don't know. You think he did it? You know, and so like I don't see that. And then, you know, it's the same thing. You know, there's no consistency in the political structure of New York whatsoever. And then we fast forward, we go over to the same thing. You look at this office of the nightlife, and they're like, we want to help businesses. We want to cure you. And then when you call the office of the nightlife, they want to hammer you unless you go pay somebody else a side fee, unless you help some consulting firm get paid really high, and then they'll take care of all your stuff for you. But then they're going crazy. They went nuts about the March program. They said, oh, we don't like that. We don't like the March program. The March program's no good. You go in there, you don't help these businesses. These are tax-paying businesses. These are businesses that provide jobs. And then take it over to the marijuana, and they're basically doing the March program. And it's like nothing makes sense. There's no consistency. Eric Adams needs to change, get stuff done, to hashtag arbitrary and capricious. Every policy he has, arbitrary and capricious. If you're my friend, you could do whatever you want. You can make $400,000. You don't have to abide by any of the mandates. You don't have to abide by any of the rules. The laws are a mere suggestion for you. If you're not, I'm throwing the book at you with everything I got. You're going to be held accountable, because then no one's above the law. And it should really be, well, it's not no one's above the law. It's just if you're not in the club, you're not above the law. If you're in the club, you're above the law.
I do like the fact that they left the sex offender status exclusive of this particular bill. Again, I think pretty much you could come back from anything except for certain things. You know, pedophilia. I think that has to be out there. I don't think you get a clean slate from that, because we all have to protect our gems, and those are our women, and those are our children. We have to protect them. That's the bottom line. So I agree with that when it comes to this clean slate bill. I mean, certain things when it comes to sex offender status, I think are a little ridiculous. You know, if a 19-year-old boy gets a sex offender status for having a relationship with a 16-year-old girl, is it right? No. But is that something that you should pay for life? That's far different from someone that's actually, trafficking children, or someone that touched maybe a 7 or 8-year-old, which is completely disgusting. But something like that, you can't come back for. Or these people that do these crazy things and put cameras in women's bathrooms or locker rooms like that. These are people that can never be trusted. That has to be out there. Things like that. So, but for the most part, people do deserve second chance, third chances, and so do cops, especially when it comes from perspective of an outside source, such as an independent watchdog as a civilian complaint review board. Cops should get a clean slate. I think it should almost be like when it comes to your car insurance. You know, if you're involved in a car accident, it's on your record for 3 years. The same thing when it comes to civilian complaints. I think if you get a civilian complaint, if it's substantiated, it should be on your record for 3 years, and after 3 years, it should immediately come off. And I've been saying that for years. No way should that be there forever, especially if you get in the police department at 21 years old. And at 41 years old, if you're still doing policing 20 years later, if you're still out there in the street, you're not the same cop. You've evolved. You've become more mature. This is why you get paid more. You learn the skills of how to interact with people. And these are arts and skills that you learn as a police officer that as you go further in your career, that make you a better and viable member of the service and a better law enforcement agent.
Yeah, so Ron Layson says, I think you should explain to non-MOS the fact that a substantiated, and by substantiated, it means that you were found guilty, substantiated CCRB that leads to charges and specs. So it's a civilian complaint against you, which is a administrative NYPD charge. This is not a crime. So you are substantiated, and then the department takes action against you, which is charges and specs. and then you are found not guilty, it does not change the CCRB case or the 50A. So basically, you were accused of something by the CCRB. The department investigated it, and you were found not guilty. Yet it remains on your record again for eternity. And so we're gonna give the NYPD unions. We're gonna give you some more free consultation now. So listen closely. Okay, write this down. So Pat Hendry and the rest of them are now talking about how, when in this particular scenario, when you are found not guilty, it will now be removed from your record and your 50A, right? It'll be removed from your record when you're found not guilty. But I'm here to tell you today, that's not enough, Pat. It's like the 3 spots of hair on your head. It just doesn't cover it. You're only getting the 1 spot here. So what you should be advocating for is that after a certain amount of time period, like criminals, cops should be held to the same standard, where their record, regardless if they were found guilty or not, should be expunged. And when they retire, those records should be sealed because they no longer matter. The minute you submit your papers and you're retired and you hand in your ID card and you get a retired ID card and you get a pistol permit, it's over. It was administrative work function. The only thing that should matter at that point is that I have a good guy letter from the NYPD. I retired honorably. That's it. That record should be expunged at that point. So you're vying, hanging out in Somos and in Puerto Rico with all these clowns and the progressive light Republicans. It doesn't go far enough. You're not protecting your cops. You're not doing what you need to do. You're not sitting there honing in on the issue. This is a big problem, what Ron Leeson pointed out. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem while cops are still on the job. But once they're off the job, why is any of this a problem? It should be completely sealed. So that's our free consultation for the day for you gentlemen. All right? You're welcome.
Absolutely. That's always been my argument. Again, you look at my 50A, and I have civilian complaints there that were substantiated, that led to charges, that went to trial. I was found not guilty, won that trial, but it's not reflective according to the 50A. According to the 50A, you still see the substantiations. It does not indicate that there was a trial and I was found not guilty. So again, and if you receive an allegation, these things should be completely, immediately removed from your record. And if you are substantiated, after a 3-year period, they should be removed. And this should be a tiered system. If it's a force case and it's substantiated, maybe it stays on there for 3 years. If it's in a case of abuse of authority, just as Jeffrey Maggi received, then maybe that comes off after a year. So this should definitely be a tiered system. Or offensive language or discourtesy, but the fact that it remains on your record forever is absolutely insane. Why do we need the 50A public record of members of the service who are now retired, 20 years in retirement? Absolutely ridiculous. It's administrative. These are not crimes. And yet people are getting second and third chances because it's understood by Kathy Hochul and New York government that it makes them less viable because of their record to get gainful employment and to be a member of the society. Well, the same thing works for a police officer. When you're retired or inactive and no longer working as a law enforcement agent, according to your 50A, that is public record that makes you less attractive, not just in employment, but also in life, right? Because fortunately, I'm married, but if I was in a situation where I'm single, if I was out there dating and I'm on Tinder, and if some girl is smart, right, and she should, and starts to do a background check and looks up Eric Dim, she's like, oh my God, this guy's a monster. He's got all these complaints. He stuck his finger in someone's ass, right? And no one says that I was found not guilty, and that's absolutely a complete lie, and stick my finger in someone's ass. But the bottom line is that was one of the allegations, right? A use of force allegation, and that still remains there. So if you were some woman, you're out in the dating game and you saw that, would you date that person? Absolutely not. And that's why we're doing this. That's why part of this podcast is to help, to be a force outside, to help within. So absolutely right. To the New York City PBA, don't just pack courtrooms. You have to actually change legislation. You have to put your finger on it. You have to fight, and you have to fight like hell. And the question is, how do you fight? I'm not telling you to fight with your fist. You have to fight with your knowledge. You have to fight by being intrusive. You have to ask questions. You have to show up to these CCRB meetings, and you actually have to know what you're talking about.
Neil asks, how would the clean slate bill affect a person should they be arrested again after their initial records have been sealed? Would the judge be made aware of a prior criminal history? Now, even when your records are sealed, they're never sealed. I have 2 sealed arrests on my name. Yet anytime I have to do a background check, whether it's for a firearm or law enforcement job, I have to disclose that, right? I have to disclose the fact that I was arrested. So, and those seals will pop up should you run me in any type of criminal database. It'll show my record sealed, but anybody could see it. And there's people that have sealed access where they could actually check the record. I believe the judge is going to be one of them. This article comes in by way of Michael Freed, CNY Central. Thanks for sending this over, Michael. Just here's some data on the Clean Slate Act so you guys understand it. New York's Clean Slate Act seals certain criminal records to give fresh starts. Albany, New York. Article is by Charlotte Hansen. The Clean Slate Act took effect in New York State Saturday after being signed by Governor Kathy Hochul in November of 23. The law automatically seals certain criminal records after a required waiting period and several requirements. In order to qualify, a person convicted or jailed for a misdemeanor must wait 3 years, while a person convicted or jailed for a felony must wait 8 years. Anyone who is convicted of Class A felonies like murder or registered as a sex offender is not eligible. The person must maintain a clean record and no longer be on probation or parole. So those are all the facts that we have. But like I said, sealed just means it's more like kind of sealed to the public. Most employers will not have access to that unless you're looking for a government job, particularly one where you will have federal, you will be carrying a firearm, confidential information. You're going to be required to reveal that. So is it a sealed traditional seal? No, but it is a traditional seal. It will be sealed. That's what it is. Like I said, I'm not so crazy about it, but again, this is just going to be a talking point for the other police podcast. They're going to say it's because of bill reform and it's because of the Clean Slate Act. And that's all. So congrats, guys. You got another talking point. So
yeah, well, more stakeholders. That's what it's going to be. Oh, it's just the stakeholders, but not right. It's always, we hear these buzzwords. The stakeholders created by John Shell. Yeah, the stakeholders. And guess what? NYPD upper echelon management leadership, you are a stakeholder also. You're a stakeholder in this. There's a dichotomy between what goes on in the NYPD and what goes on in government, right? Do you necessarily have a say? Well, you do have some input by actually putting your feet on the ground and getting out there and not just politicizing yourself and actually pandering to Eric Adams and the rest of New York government by actually saying, well, you know what? We don't agree. We understand this. This makes sense. So since this makes sense, well, why not do we have the same for our police officers? Our law enforcement officers are not getting a second chance in their employment, and yet people are getting a second chance in life. And there's a huge dichotomy here. Again, just shows the standard is completely disdain and bias towards law enforcement, a complete disdain by New York government when it comes to law enforcement. Absolutely. It's just despicable that people can get a clean slate in life and law enforcement are played for life. That 58 is only meant not to be transparent, but just to destroy and deteriorate the lives of law enforcement members. It's complete bullying. It's a complete tactic. Honestly, it's horrific. It's terrible. And at some point, the union, you cannot just pack courtrooms, but you actually have to put your finger on this. CCRB has a monthly meeting every month, and you could actually attend it virtually. You could sit there from your office, Pat Hendry, and you could actually attend that meeting monthly, and you could actually have some input if you want to make real change.
yeah, Ron says, Eric, you have to put your finger on it. No pun intended. And then TC says that he hoped you wash your hands, Eric.
I think it was TC also. TC said Eric did the proctologist. So
yeah. Those were good. Those were good. Yvette says the same thing's true for Department of Education complaints. I'm not sure. I didn't look in that. And also we're hearing that the whole Michael Jordan thing was a complete lie. So I'm glad to hear that. So, but yeah, The vet saying Department of Education complaints, same exact thing. And again, it just shows like the hypocrisy in our elected leaders. You know, it's like, well, these administrative things matter more than criminal matters. I'm not finding it. I'm not seeing it. I think last thing before we get out of here, I think we gotta hone in on this one. Let me bring this up. So
before you bring it up, I just want to say, because this is great, we're going to talk about. The vet says this is the same issue with the gang database, though. I was put on that list for association in my teens. My name stayed on that list as inactive 20 years plus later until the database was banned. I agree with you. I definitely think there's some teeth to that. I don't think that someone who's 16 years old involved in a gang, if they're a 35, 40-year-old person who's a good, obliging member of society, it's the same person. They shouldn't still be on the gang database. You're absolutely right. That we definitely need change when it comes to that. Also, we can see how it's on par with the clean slate and also the 50A.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think that the gang database is a great tool. But if you're no longer involved in criminal activity, there should be a point where you are now removed off of that database. I shouldn't have been walking down the block any longer if I haven't been hanging out with those people or partaking in crimes in the last, 3 years or whatever it is. And everyone in the precinct knows who I am and they're watching me. You should be able to go on and live your life as a regular member of society. We all make mistakes. I've made several. I've been arrested for twice. I paid my debt to society and I moved on. And I was given that opportunity by New York City to move ahead in my life and become a productive tax-paying member of society. And I think everyone deserves that chance. I do. I think, I don't think anyone's irredeemable. Oh, I don't know. Some people are.
AJ says, hilarious, because after what I just said, he says there is definitely some teeth to that, and so does this female. Yeah, he says there is definitely some teeth to that. So does this female.
Yeah,
Let's get into speaking of teeth.
So for those of you that don't know, this is Council Member Susan Zang. I believe Vito Labella. I think we had him on here, and he was running against her, if I'm not mistaken, it's for City Council. I'm pretty sure he was running against Susan as a Republican. Susan's what's known in New York City as a moderate Democrat. I don't know that I will make the same assertion, but so she was out at protesting a homeless shelter. I believe she covers like parts of Bensonhurst and a little bit of Bay Ridge, kind of buttons up, I believe, with Justin Brannan's district. Dyker Heights, I believe, some parts of it. She's like right around there. I forget the district in Brooklyn, 65 or something. Anyway, she wins election. She's Councilmember Susan Zang. She's holding a protest against a homeless shelter in her district. So she has a lot of her people out there, a lot of the communities out there fighting against this. And this is her out at the protest. And she actually begin to fight with the NYPD and actually bites an NYPD chief. Here's the video here. Let's watch it. Here you see her officer trying to cuff her. He has one cuff on her. She's pushing back on the barriers. There's the chief. I don't love this video, but you see her with her mouth open going to bite him, and boom, there is the injury. What is clear as day is a mouth, is a bite. What does John Shell have?
With the New York City Police Department.
Hold on. Let's play with this whole thing.
Zang tussling over a barricade with an NYPD officer. This photo shows Zang opening her mouth, the NYPD says, to bite Deputy Chief of Patrol Frank DiGiacomo. This is the injury he suffered from that bite, according to the NYPD.
Councilwoman Zang has been a great partner with the New York City Police Department for a long time. But the actions today of assaulting one of our police officers, Deputy Chief, by biting him viciously in the arm, I can't explain it right now.
Zang was arrested and charged with second and third degree assault, both felonies, and resisting arrest. She was arraigned tonight and released, but refused to explain what happened.
The councilwoman is not going to speak. We have advised her not to talk about the events of this morning. As I said.
All right. So what do you think?
God, I love John Shell. Oh yeah, she was a great partner to the NYPD, but she took a chunk out of one of your fellow chiefs. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. She should be prosecuted. You should be standing saying you don't care what relationship she had with the police department. The bottom line is she committed crime. She attacked a law enforcement officer, and you will do everything in your power that justice is met and that she's prosecuted to the law. That's it.
So pretty funny. I think Justin Brennan, when a new member of the council came in, he had like handed them a book or something. I don't remember, but it was something about like biting. Like the next day, like when they were just sworn into the council, he like handed them a book about chomping or something like that. It was something along those lines. And then so Susan Zhang filed an ethics complaint against Justin Brennan. So now recently, Susan Swang has had her people out on the ground in Brooklyn, and they're actually fundraising for her legal criminal defense, fighting against her being arrested for biting an NYPD chief. So I mean, it's just a highlight in New York City politics, the childishness, the craziness. A great friend of the New York City Police Department. She almost took a chunk out of the dude's arm. Completely wrong. Listen, and I support the protest. I got no problem when you protest away. Whether I agree with you or not, protest away. We're getting into biting chiefs. And I get sometimes at these protests, cops are a little too much, especially when it's a conservative issue, especially when it's not a progressive leftist issue. If you want to tear down the whole system and you hate the NYPD, you have free roam to do whatever you want in New York City. But if you're like actually honing in on some type of issue that's related to keeping America sane, keeping their children safe, their wives safe, their home safe, the city that they work in safe, they themselves safe, then, there's a lot of bigger, heavy hand. The Chiefs get very more powerful. Their shoulders get bigger. Their chest muscles get bigger. Their arms grow. They get these big muscles. And then, there's a no tolerance policy in the NYPD for protesting. But don't ever put your hands on them. I mean, it's a lose-lose situation. There's no reason to ever do that, especially bite someone and you're a seated member of city council. And yet she's filing ethics complaints against it. She's fundraising for a legal defense, which is now what we've seen under Eric Adams, right? He's another guy fundraising for his legal defense. His defense fund isn't doing too well anymore. He spent almost all of the money that he raised so far. I think he might actually even be in the red by this point. But yeah, wild times in New York City, my friends. Wild times.
Well, listen, I got to be honest. I mean, just show the professionalism of the police department and the restraint. Because honestly, after her creating that type of bite, she shouldn't have any teeth left. And that's the bottom line. I mean, and this is completely ridiculous. And for John Shell to kind of like say, she was a great friend, leave the politics out of it. The bottom line is, at a protest, we support the First Amendment. We support expression. We support protests. We'll do everything in our power to make sure that these protests are allotted, but you have to maintain civil obedience. And attacking a law enforcement officer will not be tolerated, and then we will take action, and you will be prosecuted to the law. That should be the conversation. That's how you're a stakeholder in this. But to say that she's a friend of the police department, clearly she's not a friend of the police department. No one in city council is. If anyone is, maybe Bob Holden is pretty supportive of the police department. But other than that, can you think of anyone? Yeah. And right, that's a complete shake job too. But other than Bob Holden, can you think of anyone in city council that is really cheering for law and order? I can't.
I think people call for law and order, but they don't hone in on the issues. I think Vicky Palladino, for the most part, weighs in on certain issues, but she's gonna sit there and stand up for Eric Adams when he's wrong. She's gonna sit there and stand up for John Shell when he's wrong. She made an assertion that this podcast was racist, that we were sharing racist memes that were based upon Eric Adams' racist statements. I think when it comes to the New York City Police Department, I don't believe that the New York City Police Department has any friends in New York City politics because no one weighs in on the truth in New York City. I don't believe, so it's funny, like as much as I knock them, the unions, when they donate to the far left Democrats, I mean, they're all basically the same. I'm watching, who's this kid? Mike Lawler in Congress. He just won a re-election against Jon Jones. I'm watching him now setting himself up for a gubernatorial run. He touts himself as the most bipartisan Republican. He's the most bipartisan member of Congress, and now he wants to be the governor of New York. Shame on New York if they vote for this kid. He's not a friend to anybody either. He's not a friend to anybody either. Weak, soft. They don't hone in on the issues. Why is Marlon Bethel not back at work? Why is he not back at work?
Shout out to back at work. You're 100% right, brother. Marlon Bethel should be working. He, according to Eric Adams, right? Pre-indictment Eric Adams, please pardon me, Eric Adams. He wasn't discarding anybody, right? We don't discard people. But goodbye, Marlon Bethel. Marlon Bethel is not black to Eric Adams. He's just he's cannon pop. You can just get rid of him. He's a peasant. Brooklyn's best. Shout out to you. You're right, Joanne Ariola. Joanne Ariola, I should have mentioned. She's good too. But for the most part,
she's good. Joanne Ariola is good, but she's on the fire chair, and I'm not gonna lie, she fights very hard for the fire department. I don't see the same fervor when it comes to the New York City Police Department. I'm not gonna lie, I like Joanne. I would love to see Joanne run for mayor, but I'm not gonna lie. When it comes to the New York City Police Department, the person that I see speak up the hardest for them, sometimes, as long as it doesn't go against what the narrative is being painted by the upper echelon of Eric Adams, is Vicky Palladino, and I'm not going to lie about that.
I'll agree. I think it's pretty much on par when it comes to Vicky and Bob Holland. Yeah, but Vicky likes to play that game because immediately she didn't back out with First Amendment. She came after us, also referring and inferring that this podcast is racist. Meanwhile, the memes that come out of this podcast is from Eric Adams, is from this administration that are their own words. So who's the ones that are racist here? So again, shout out to Marlon Bethel. He should not be discarded. Neither should Sal Greco, and neither should you, John. Neither should I. We all took an oath. We did our jobs with exemplary status. And the bottom line is, at the time, we all thought, wow, our careers are ending, and we had to make substantial decisions. And some of us, unlike some of us, unfortunately, Sal Greco and Marlon Bethel, those decisions were made for them. But you know what? In this path right now, I couldn't be happier. So if you're at your 20th year right now and you're an active member of the service in the NYPD or another law enforcement agency, and you have that opportunity to retire, do not be afraid. Do not worry about how much money you have. Money's a roller coaster in life. You'll always tip the scales. You're up, you're down. The bottom line is, how do you feel about yourself? Find the significance and importance in life. There's a life after retirement. There's a whole world out there. And it's, honestly, at this point, I realize it's the best thing that happened to me. I think John probably feels the same way. I couldn't be happier. Having the friends and listeners that we have on this podcast, me and the people, it opened a lot of doors being in retirement now and having this opportunity to be expressive. I know John Shell doesn't like it. I'm sure he wishes he could give John and myself charges or some form of discipline, but you can't, buddy. Too late for you, buddy. Have a nice day.
Well, unfortunately, I think he wishes a lot worse than that, but that's on him. I'm not going to try to get in his head. So yeah, I'm looking forward to him retiring though, and I'm looking forward to his podcast. I think it'll be great. I'll probably be his number one listener. I'm going to hone in on those things. I'm going to keep them right here. A non-mayor says, "What's your take on Staten Island Joe?" We're going on 2 hours, 10 minutes. I want to talk about Staten Island real quick, right before we do that, and then we'll get off here. Staten Island Joe Borelli, to me, is a friend to nobody. He's not a friend to the Republican Party. He's not a friend to the New York City Police Department. He's not a friend to Staten Island. Again, Joe Borelli, I put it out recently with congestion pricing, was his tweet. We won. I was like, no, Joe, you didn't win anything. Stop gaslighting all the people. You didn't win anything. Joe Borelli, anti-mandate, shows up at the rally, goes to every diner and shows his card to everybody. Not a friend to anybody. Turned his back on me, turns back on the New York City Police Department, Fire Department, everybody. When Eric Adams called us crackers, talking about how he was kicking people, crackers' asses in the NYPD, I don't know what he was referring to. I was like, Is he talking about beating up white people when he was at work? Because he certainly wasn't outperforming anybody when it comes to making arrests and being out on the street. So I don't know what he was talking about. Joe Borelli's like, I don't care because I'm not a Karen. And I'm like, no, Joe, you don't care because you're a coward. That's the difference. It's not because you don't care and you're not a Karen. It's because it's wrong. If it was you, Joe, you'd have to step down. But because it's Eric Adams, you're not saying a word. So he's a friend to nobody, not his own children. When it came to the mask mandate, he did nothing. Should have kept his kids out of work. These are people that are in there. He made fun of Governor Cuomo for writing a book during COVID, when he wrote two during COVID. Friend to absolutely nobody. He's it's all of them. Nicole Maliotakis, I'm not a fan of. What's the other guy? David Carr, horrible, horrendous. Mike Tanusis, horrendous. Mike Riley's probably the best one, and I can pick him apart for days. So another retired NYPD lieutenant. I could pick him apart for days. When we talk about the red light cameras and the speed cameras in Staten Island, I was like, when I was still living there full time, I was infuriated about it. I said, why do we have the disproportionate amount of cameras all over Staten Island? We pay the most amount of taxes. Is this what we get for voting for you? And the way I was looking at it, this was a Democratic controlled state and city, a one party rule. And we were just getting slammed on because this is where the majority of Republicans live and because we're red. Come to find out that the same guys that are sitting there and telling you, vote for me, and if you vote for me, we're going to get these cameras taken away. Come to find out that some of their buddies have a big interest in those cameras, big personal interest in the cameras, right? And then so when after David Carr and Joe Borelli campaigned that if you vote for them, that they were going to do away with the camera lights, what happened? We just got more and more camera lights, right? So I reached out to them. Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Like, what's going on? You guys ran on this. What's happening? Oh, it's actually not us. We're going to bring in our state. We're going to bring in our partner in the state, Mike Riley. So I said, Mike, what's going on with this? What's going on? Like, what are we doing? Like, this is ridiculous. We have more cameras than the rest of the city. It's a disproportionate amount. What's happening here in Staten Island? Like, I don't see the deaths or the accidents that we should have this. If anything, you go to it's far less than what we're getting in the other boroughs. I don't see why we're having these, and the speed limits are ridiculous. If we truly care about public safety and slowing people down, we'll put in speed bumps, not cameras. We'll put speed bumps in. Put the speed bumps in by the schools. We don't need a camera by that. We don't need a camera line on the bus. We need speed bumps by schools. That'll save lives. And basically, the conversation went dead because they're not doing anything about it. And there is a Staten Island politician who has an interest in those speed cameras and is making money in it. And there are Republicans. So in my opinion, Staten Island GOP, progressive light, they do absolutely nothing. GOP across New York and New York State, in my opinion, is terrible. They're the progressive light, and that's why Alvin Bragg is the front runner for a Manhattan DA. And they're to date, hopefully it changes after this podcast, to date, there is not one candidate that the Republicans have put up to become the Manhattan District Attorney.
Crazy 10-7, $1.99 to the podcast. The worst people are running the department at all angles. Absolutely. This is by far, this is the most inadequate, most corrupt administration we've seen. The appearance of impropriety is so blatant. I think at this point, do we need an investigation to say that there's corruption going on? Absolutely not, because the nepotism is so egregious, it equates to corruption in this administration right now. Thank you so much for the coffee and donuts. Anon Mayor, shout out to you, brother, for dipping into your pocket. Again, I appreciate it. We really appreciate your insight. Hopefully you join us on more X Spaces, more coffee and donuts at the podcast. This is exactly why I asked. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to say this. I don't have the data, but I would assume, based on my observations and also being a former Staten Islander myself, yet Staten Island is the forgotten borough. I would say that Staten Island provides the most service when it comes to families of any borough. We see kids growing up in Staten Island, they become sanitation workers, they become firemen, they become teachers, they become cops. Staten Island is very wholesome when it comes to blue-collar workers and a life of service. I saw numerous kids in Staten Island join the military, join the police department. I think right now, if you go to Staten Island, you could easily you can point a finger at a house, say, oh, that kid works for sanitation, that kid works for transit. It's that type of borough where people live a life of service. Wouldn't you agree, John? And yet, Joe Borelli is not the first name we mentioned about who was supporting law and order when it comes to New York City Council. Immediately, names came to mind. It's Bob Holden, Vicky Palladino, Joanne Ariola. Joe Borelli, to me, is not at the top of that list, and I think it's a complete failure. You know, we spoke about it when it comes to the congestion pricing, a complete failure. You know, he's celebrating a win. And even back when it came to the vaccine, John, we spoke about it. And remember, he said he's going to fight. And you said, okay, what does that look like? Because there's no fight. It's actually just complete silence. It's come to the point where it appears that the Republicans and the Democrats are one party. If anything, I think I have more respect for the Democrats because at least they're outspoken and we know who they are. And the Republicans, we don't really know who they are at this point. And John calls them progressive light. I think it's hysterical. John, I'm going to give you that. We have to get a shirt that says New York Republicans, progressive light. I love when you say that. So listen, shout out to you guys. And also, I think it was TC. You're absolutely right. TC says when you retire, you question yourself for about a month. Did I do the right thing? Hey, these are great questions. Then after that, you question yourself again. Why didn't I do this sooner? Absolutely. So if you're at the point and you don't know if you should jump over that fence, you have one foot out. If your fear is, well, a lot of times we hear, well, I have small kids, I can't retire. You can retire. Don't ask yourself, why can't I retire? Ask yourself, why can I retire? Right? And if you want, retire. There's a world out there, travel, whatever it is, your passion, but there's money to be made out there. There's money to be made out there. I promise you, there's actually more money to be made. Sometimes I question myself about, I rarely ever went sick. I went sick twice in my career, and both times were for surgery on my feet. My feet had got badly messed up in the Marines. But other than that, it was plenty of times my back was hurting. I was sick, and I went to work. And I was always the first one in and the last one out. And I saw something on social media. The guy says, be the last one in and the first one out because nobody cares. It doesn't make a difference. And you know what? I have to agree. You are just a number when you work for the police department. It's unfortunate. I mean, the things that I did in the police department, the things that John did in the police department, Sal Greco, Marlon Bevel, and we're just names that we know. Thousands of other things that our active and retired members did or continue to do. In the end, if you go out there and give you your opinion, it doesn't matter. They're going to say that you didn't do anything. They're going to say that they're going to try to smear you and slander you, that your opinion no longer matters. John Shell forgot all the great stuff that we did for the police department and all the great stuff that we're doing now. He claims that he cares about morale and cares about camaraderie. The stuff we're doing now makes an impact and helps police officers rank and file while they're on the street right now. So if he really cares, he would actually promote this podcast, but he doesn't care because he cares about himself. He cares about his ego. Tariq Shepard, Kaz Daughtry, the other chief manager, they care about keeping things under wraps, and they don't want the appearance of impropriety being exposed to the public. And that's the problem. That's why they won't come on this podcast, because they don't want to have real conversations. We would show them respect, but that doesn't mean that we have to respect them. We're not going to pander them and massage them. We're going to have real conversations, and that's why they won't come on here. It's not an echo chamber. It's real conversations. So again, thank you so much, friends, and listen to the podcast. We appreciate it. You know it. We'll be back tomorrow, 8:05 live. We've got a packed week for you. John and I were talking about last week where we had kind of a roundtable, and we had our friends on the podcast just put out their comments, and we had a discussion. We're going to try to do that once a week. I think it was great. It was awesome. And so if there's stuff that you want to discuss, we'll probably do it this week on Friday, unless there's some crazy news we have to discuss. Other than that, thank you for sharing. Please repost this out there. Like and subscribe. New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast. Shout out to you people. We appreciate it.
All right, people. 8:05 tomorrow. Finest Unfiltered. We'll be back at you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community, but who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.